let me just say it about all of them because they're all this way. I start strong with the graphite. I feel good about it. I go into the painting. The start is pretty nice. It all looks like what I've planned. And when it gets down to those details and stuff, things start falling apart because of my sort of, is the right word? Is it like a dissonance between the two techniques maybe? Academic and impressionism don't mesh the whole way.
Hey, how's it going? You are here for Heavy Art Talk, and I am beyond stoked. I have Burney joining me today from Austin, Texas. Burney, if you have seen any of the stuff that he's created on his Instagram, it's unreal. He brings a level of like classical technique to the metal scene that is desperately needed, and his work absolutely amazes me. Beyond that, seems like a really chill dude. This should be a lot of fun. And a couple of band credits, a couple releases from this year. He did the latest Dodsrit album cover, as well as Antichrist Siege Machine, which for the sake of this, we're just going to say ASM because it's going to be a lot easier so I don't get my tongue tied. But he's also done some work for Necrofier, Devil Master, and Bestial Claret. Yeah, without further ado, Burney, what's up, man?
Greetings. Thanks for having me, man. This is awesome. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, dude. I'm stoked. Just as we start out, what have you been listening to recently?
Just today, a couple I can rattle off are like Necromantic Worship, Judas Iscariot, Moonblood, Abagor.
Nice.
A couple of those. Yeah, I kind of have this constant YouTube playlist. Like when I'm in doubt, I just throw it on because I know it's good shit, and it'll just play for me for hours. Oh
yeah.
Typically
is black metal your like go to? Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely my favorite of all of them, and I've definitely gone through phases, but black metal has never left, and it was the initial discovery too. It went from, I think, being a pretty young kid, 14 something, 15, listening to like pop punk and stuff like that, and even like Minor Threat and stuff. But everything started to get faster and gnarlier and crazier. And I found spaz and lack of interest and all of that power violent shit. And then I remember for the first time hearing Emperor, and it just changed me.
Yeah.
I didn't give a shit about anything else for a long time, and I still kind of don't. I mean, I listen to a lot of death metal and all kinds of shit. Still listen to grindcore, but I definitely crave black metal, especially when I'm working, for sure.
Help you get in that kind of like trance-like state at times.
Yeah, for sure. That droning kind of white noise. Generally, the lower quality, the more I appreciate it for some reason.
Yeah.
As long as there's good melodies, riffs obviously matter, yeah. Black metal.
I know what you mean. I recall like in early high school, I mean, for me, there's the gateway bands of like Cradle of Filth and Dimmu Borgir, but right from there it went to Mayhem and Emperor, and that is quite a jump when you're that age in terms of like getting used to the audio quality and the sound. And like
for
Freezing Moon, I loved the song, but then I heard Attila's vocals and I'm like, this is weird. And it took like 5 years to get used to that. But man. And in the Nightside Eclipse, I think that clicked for me a lot quicker. And
that was mine too.
I mean, the fucking album art just blew my mind.
Insanity. Yeah. And I stuck in melodic black metal for a while. I think just because of lack of reach, record stores only had so much of it. I would go to this record store in Santa Cruz, California, Streetlight Records. I don't know if it's still there or not. But someone was working there at the time that knew their shit. I didn't. I just was judging by the artwork on the covers as I went through he had like 4 rows of good black metal. And that's where I discovered Judas Iscariot. I still have it, In the Night Side, or Distant and Solitary Night.
Nice.
And a bunch of other ones, Iljarn, all these like first pressing CDs, and I would just get my arms full of them and then take them back to Monterey where I lived every weekend and just try them all out, and Gummo, actually, that soundtrack introduced me to Absu.
That had like Burzum on it too, right?
Yeah. And some good soundtrack,
A crazy movie.
Yeah. Crazy ass movie. Yeah, I love it.
Oh man. So that's pretty cool. So did you grow up in California primarily and now you're in Texas?
I was born in Redding, and then my parents moved us around a bunch until I'm around California until I was about 12-ish. Parents split. My mom went to Boise, Idaho. My dad went back to Monterey. They were in Concord, Walnut Creek area for a while. And I bounced back and forth between the two for some years, probably until I think I moved back to Monterey when I was like 18, and I lived there till I was about 20, then went to Boise, and then I came to Austin when I was 21, and I'm 42 now. So I've been in Austin.
You've seen a lot of changes with Austin then.
Yeah. I think I got the tail end of, I guess you could call it the good era. Everyone talks about how cool the old light bulb was, that kind of thing. But yeah, I got emos and all that shit before it moved and all that stuff. And I bartended at a place called the Mohawk downtown as well for some years. And
that's still up. That's a pretty well regarded venue. I know.
Yeah.
Nate Garrett of Spirit Adrift talks about it all the time on his podcast, and he's also a little outside of Austin, I believe, just based on what he said.
It's a cool venue, especially for outdoor venue. It sounds great. The indoor stage is rad. Have lots of good memories there for sure. Made a lot of friends, and that was one of my last day jobs before I discovered Instagram. And started posting art. It was all motorcycles for a while. I think I had Instagram for maybe a year or so before I started posting art, and I was riding motorcycles and just kind of, doing what I guess you do when you have Instagram and don't draw.
Yeah.
Take pictures of dogs and things like that,
Oh yeah. I remember the glory days.
Yeah.
Flashback Friday and all that shit. That doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So, I guess you have you just been painting full time since then in terms of your last day job, or what?
So I was I guess even when I was a teenager, I would make punk flyers and metal show flyers and stuff for friends. The random shirt design here and there for like someone's birthday party, or nothing super serious. I did a couple like airbrush murals in Boise on these office buildings that were garbage pretty much. They were, I always wondered if they were still there or if I could see maybe they're not as bad as I remember them, but I got paid all right. I think I was in like, I don't know, 9th or 10th grade. Anyways,
Damn.
But I was still like working dishwasher jobs and skateboarding and stuff, and then it kind of went pretty quickly into pen and ink due to like appreciating comic book art, and so I can't remember exactly how it happened, but I started making shirts for some friends that have motorcycle garages locally in Austin, and like motorcycle adjacent clothing, like tits flying all over the place and skulls and shit, and so that was just fun, and they, hey, I'll give you $150 if you make me a shirt design. I'd get a few free shirts out of it. I'd post it on Instagram, and that's sort of how it started to pick up speed, was with pen and ink, and I did a couple things for Show Class magazine, little zine, chopper zine back then. And I guess like anything, I guess we all know we're all on it. You know, you get one job, it leads to another, and someone else will see it. You hopefully get another one. I don't remember exactly, you know, when I stopped working a bartending job, but it was practically overnight at a new job that I had. I worked at another place downtown, and I remember asking for part-time shifts because I was selling stuff here and there. And then slowly I was working twice a week, once a week, and then once a month, and then they never saw me again, which is pretty rad. So it was like a slow evolution to independence, I guess you could call it, to freelance independence. And it was all pen and ink for a long time. I was pretty much, I still love Burney Wrightson, but I was trying to draw like him the most, I think. And obviously I saw a lot of Gustav Doré in his work, and I tried to just start focusing on that as far as getting better goes, you know. Looking at my old stuff, it was definitely based, like I loved the old 70s, 60s, 70s comics, Zap and Skull Comics and Kitchen Sink and all that stuff. All of that
San Fran stuff.
Psychedelic shit. So there was and it was perfect for motorcycles, and it was just what I was into at the time, and it was just so much fun to draw. Just all this goofy shit, usually exploding somehow, and nudity and violence and all the good shit that we love. And so I just rode that for a while. I could keep going, I guess, if it goes.
Oh, this is fascinating. Keep going, man. Yeah. Keep going.
I'm trying. It's fun to think about. I haven't really thought about it this deeply in a long time. I think that Foundation Skateboards contacted me, and I was super excited. It was insane. I still can't believe I work for skateboard companies when I make one for Creature and all this stuff. It's unbelievable. But anyway, I didn't do anything with Foundation. I don't know what happened to that conversation that we had on the phone, but I just he sort of fizzled. And then like a couple months later, a friend of mine said he recommended me to Creature because he was friends with Lee Sharon, who's the art director over there at the time. And Lee called me, and that was just so fucking unbelievable. I think the first job he hired me for was a 6-deck series, or 5 or 6. I think they ended up calling it the Rumble series. So my idea was that I could use what I knew from comic books and everything else so far. I hadn't been doing it very long, a year or so, and that was
professionally.
Yeah. I might have even still been bartending when I got the Creature job. But anyways, I just thought I thought because I didn't really know what to do for each of them. It was 6 guys. And so I just figured I'd use their personalities to decorate the board, you know? And I did. And I talked to all of them but Navarette, I think, on an email or through Instagram or something, and kind of picked their brains. And that to me made it it seemed to clear up at the time a lot of misconceptions about how it was going to go down working professionally like this.
Yeah.
Meaning I was afraid of people telling me what to do, which is why I didn't like day jobs. That's why we all hate bosses, whatever. Right. But it's suddenly dawned on me, if I could get a good enough idea together and just pitch it to them, they might go for it. And that got me super excited because he paid a deposit, and then I was just free. I was just loose to just devastate. And I would also draw them giant too, because I was drawing so minuscule at the time. And I actually continued to draw a little detailed stuff for a long time. I would draw everything twice the size. So boards were like 64 inches tall or like 38 inches at least, and 10 or 11 inches wide. So those took me way too long, and I got paid, but I was stoked, got the boards. And I think from there, it was just pen and ink for a long time. I got asked to do a comic book with Dan Fogler and Justin Molman, who's now like running Heavy Metal Magazine, I think, in some respect.
Oh wow!
And at the time, it was for Kirk Hammett's Ghoul Screamer guitar pedal. So the whole book that Dan wrote was about like this possessed foot pedal that these like kind of this garage metal band wanted to use and stuff. And so, you know, they're possessed and there's demons, and of course it goes out of control. And I did the first issue. My point is that this is where I started to really get tired of pen and ink work. So from the skateboards I told you about to this, I think that's roughly 5-ish years of pen and ink work and commissions and stuff. And during the comic book, what was really struggling with anatomy, and I was doing okay. I mean, I could hold my own, but I wanted to get better. And as I was trying to make these dynamic frames for each thumbnail and all this stuff. So I was really trying to learn from the best books that I liked, whether it was Jeff Darrow or Burney Wrightson or old dudes, you know. I was trying to figure out how to compose each one really nicely. And so it ended up taking me like a month to do each page. And then also getting all these dynamic poses with these people running around. I did one book before that. I forgot. But anyways, I realized I couldn't draw legs or feet or, you know, I don't know, the back of someone's neck, whatever it is. So I started studying anatomy through, what's it called? Why am I forgetting? It's an online course. Steve Houston is Steve Houston's one of the illustrators that teaches all of this old academic style drawing, you know, ovals for arms and that kind of thing, and structural drawing and all that stuff. And so that really boosted me into a place where I could freely design figures with gesture and structure and all this shit. But what happened in there is that I was listening to this guy tell me about this academic technique and where it came from, and is obviously people like Rubens and even Michelangelo and all. It goes way back. I just started to appreciate painters. I felt like Steve Houston. I'm so thankful for him, but I felt like he was the middleman. I felt like I could just go directly to the source and start studying these paintings for poses that I needed in my own work, especially in the comics. And there's some in there too. There's direct copies of at least physique, you know, and some of the poses and stuff like that. Between Jim Lee's Batman and like old master painters, it woke me up into this new kind of thing, you know? And so I started getting away from like the bubbly cartoony stuff and trying to get more into, I guess you'd call it realism, you know, at the time. And so I wasn't painting yet, excuse me. But I realized when I was doing the books that, I liked my pencil drawings, my sketches first, before I inked them more than the finished products. So I started to try to draw with the pen more instead of taking painstaking time to do every line like this slowly across. You know, I was trying to be more free with it and get these scribbles and stuff, which at the time I got a lot of good feedback from it. A lot of people liked how scratchy and like chaotic the things were, you know? Yeah. But I just wanted to take it further, and I knew I could do it with graphite or charcoal, you know? So I started on the side between Instagram posts or commissions for pen and ink. I was studying. I have these big rolls, like these 3-foot rolls for like packing paper, like that kind of heavy cardboard paper. I have like 4 or 5 of them that I filled up. I think they're like 45 yards long.
I know what you're talking about. We used to do wrapping paper for like Christmas with like that.
Yeah. Get that rustic look, you know, little twine.
Yeah, exactly.
So I just started going nuts, trying to scouring the internet for any instructional video on anatomy I could find, and this and and slowly just started like strengthening my light and shadow skills and form and all that shit. I'm still not painting yet though, you know, but I knew around then I was like, this is all going to that. I think it was at the time I knew I wanted to work on form and values and light and shadow and all this. And it was just the beginning of, I guess where I am now, I suppose. But I studied, I think it's important for at least for my story to note that I was obsessed with academic drawing and painting. And then, and it's something else I can't pinpoint, but I eventually, fairly recently, about 3 years ago, while I was painting, I decided I didn't like line work at all anymore. I hated doing all of the structural lines. I hated doing sailboat heads, even though it works really well. I don't know if you draw heads that way, but you do a sailboat, a flat top. If they're facing this way, it's like a front sail, and you go back, and then this third line would swoop right onto your chin from the top of your head. You can do it for any person in any position, and then draw a line for their eyeballs, and it turns into a fucking head immediately, right? But
I've never heard that method.
I can maybe draw it for you and do a demonstration if you wanted to. So I guess that kind of stuff, that construction drawing and stuff, it just got on my nerves. I don't know. I just naturally just grew out of it and realized that there's this freer way of painting, and that's kind of Impressionism in a way. I could talk just on this alone probably for 4.5 hours, I think. So please stop me if I'm ranting.
No, this is what we're here for, man.
So in a nutshell, I've learned how to, I guess I've always wanted to have a strong sense of light and shadow. And I think I did have some of this in pen ink and some of this in pencil. And as the graphite got stronger, I realized I was getting at least good enough to start picking up oil painting and trying to get some color onto canvas and stuff. I'm jumping around a little bit, but I realized that I didn't want to draw lines, and I wanted to go by effect. And I've discovered Paul Ingebretson on YouTube, and he's part of a lineage of Impressionists from what's called like the Boston School, which is like Benson, Paxton, I think was part of it, but more of an academic painter. DeCamp, all these guys from the East Coast took what like Vermeer did with light and shadow and indoor scapes and did it themselves without drawing, kind of. So you mix your color, you look at something in the room, you're in the room with it, or in a landscape or looking at a still life, you mix the color you see and place it on the canvas. Then you mix something else on the opposite side, you place that on the canvas, and slowly you start to get the picture developing just by blobs and spots. And so you're just comparing what you can observe in nature and put it on the canvas. And this, to me, I tried it once and I was like, this is the way I want to paint. It just felt right. And also I was kind of going through courses with Mark Carter, who's an Austin guy, actually. I think he did a portrait of George Bush for the president when he was in office. Really? W. Bush, yeah. The way he taught painting was very similar, but he would have outlines of things. But his teaching of like observation and also of mixing color was very similar to an Impressionist, although he would pencil things on first. So he would pencil the vase and the whatever else is sitting on the table. So I kind of learned how to mix paint from him. And I learned how to like see from Paul Ingebretson. But so the contradiction is that I still do imaginative work or fantasy work or, stuff from my imagination,
Right.
which historically requires construction lines and that type of like start, So if you're sitting in here, I can mix paint that matches the tones in your face in the background and start to get you pretty quickly. And usually within 3 hours of one pass, I'll have I'll have a likeness at least. I shared the self-portrait that's half finished. It's a good example of that step that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Where was I?
We had the two. So with fantasy construction lines, typically,
Yes.
yeah.
So yeah, you can't you can't borrow. Well, you can't observe the effects in two people floating in outer space in a whirlwind of chaos or whatever it is with swords and lightning and shit, because it's just not something I can observe. So obviously you have to make it up. And this isn't unusual or anything. People have been doing this for centuries. But when it comes to starting your picture by effects like that in masses and blobs, and then you're working in these specific pieces and people and things working together, you have to draw by object, which is counterintuitive to impressionism, which is you have to draw by effect. Right. It's academics are line draftsmen and impressionists are light draftsmen, kind of is a way to think about it, I guess. So I've found myself, and I guess this is up to date now, I found myself sort of kind of fucked in a way. Like I'm getting it. So I still start pictures, I guess, like an impressionist would, right? With the effects. I do a lot of studies in graphite and try to get at least a monochromatic effects of light and get a design down, get a composition that's acceptable, and then do oil studies of color relationships. I need to do them more, actually. Currently, just today, I was spending way too much time on something that I shouldn't. I should have painted these figures first and tried out something on a different canvas first before
problems first.
Yeah, instead of solving it all while you're in the middle of.
Oh yeah.
I know you know this. Yeah. So, and that was, I guess, going back real quick, just as a tangent. I would never sketch anything when I was doing those early days of pen and ink drawings. I had a lot of fun making everything up in pencil first. And then I would just go, this is okay. And then I would just draw over it in ink. I tried to drag that on for a while, but it just couldn't work. The stuff I do now just demands that I do preliminaries. And now I don't even question it. It's how I start everything, I start doing thumbnails and just start. Sometimes I'll have 15 drawings before I start a final.
Oh, yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, you might have to keep me on track. My brains are all over the place here.
Can I interject just slightly?
Of course.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but like your Instagram is wiped of all that old style stuff, right? Like, where did you find it?
It's still there. You just gotta scroll way back. I gotta really
dig back. Okay, because like I only know you for stuff you produced in like the last 3 years, which has all been like the graphite and the oil paint and like that more classically. Influence style.
Yeah.
I think it's cool too, because like, I don't know. I love the art in this community. So there's so many different styles, so many different approaches.
Yeah.
But there's not like a ton, I mean like a lot of people that come from like a more developing all these academic skills and old classical ways of doing things. I mean, some people dabble with some of it, but like, there's not many people who take it to perhaps the level that you are in terms of like all that studying and dedication and like atelier training and all that kind of stuff,
Probably for a good reason. It's a pain in the ass.
It's a pain in the ass, but you're obsessed. You know what I mean?
Like, I am,
and like, it's kind of a pursuit towards a perfection you're never going to get. And like, that's kind of exciting. So I don't know. I'm just making a note that like there's a lot of spaces online that have discussions kind of like this.
Yeah.
But there aren't that many heavy art talk episodes that have been kind of in this vein. Because like I listen to like a lot of the Draftsman podcast and
Right.
Dark Art Society with Chet Zar. He talks about a lot of these oil painting techniques and stuff. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just cool. That's all
Thanks,
I'm really
man.
saying.
Yeah. Well, it is. There's definitely resources, especially for academic painting.
Yeah.
And so it's funny too, because I had the wrong idea about Impressionism before I knew I liked it. I think everyone, well, I did anyways. I always thought of anyone from Monet to Degas and stuff, and those guys are badass. But it wasn't what inspired me. What really inspired me was old Renaissance work and all of that really moody, crazy shit, generally witches and moons and anything barbaric and stuff like that. But also there's some sexy ones in the Rococo era and the Baroque and all this stuff. I think somehow a cherub ends up in every one of my drawings now. There's always some chubby fat baby flying through the air, or
I've noticed that. Yeah.
But I'll give him horns or something. But the end all for me has been Paul Ingebrigtsen. I couldn't recommend him enough for anyone painting or starting to paint or thinking about painting or interested in the techniques of old Impressionist masters, and anyone like Sargent and all these badasses from the East Coast and stuff. It's been game changing for sure. But I find myself stuck in the middle of the two. Trying to paint by effect, but also making stuff up in my head. I have heard him talk about it a little bit, but not to a degree that I could take a ton of notes and then go to the studio and put them to use.
Right.
So it's been a lot of my own figuring out stuff, because I kind of refuse to do line work. I did do something for another client very quickly, and he wanted a cherub on white background, and I did a few drawings by effect, and it just wasn't quite doing what I wanted. So I was like, fuck it, I'll just do the ovals real fast and a couple little gestures. And I looked at a Tiapolo cherub from one of his paintings, and I did it in a couple hours and got paid and went on about my business. But it wasn't enjoyable, really, to be honest. Nothing against the guy. I was happy to do it for him. I'm stuck in my ways now,
Interesting.
But
you've kind of been through every, like, I don't know, you've been through so many different chapters. It's interesting. It makes me think, like, what chapter am I in right now? And
what do you think? Like, who's your people right now, like, that you go to? Who do you look at for when you're about to?
I'll give you some. I'm torn between two camps as well. I am very obsessed in an academic way with some of these really, really talented watercolor painters out there, like Thomas Schaller. I mean, Sargent,
of course,
crazy good watercolor,
insane, yeah.
Paul Evanson, a lot of landscape people, which I actually don't do a lot of landscapes, but I love the techniques and the treatment of watercolor and the fact that it feels like a performance, and it's all about guiding it, So
yeah,
in some ways I can relate to what you're talking about with, like, always pursuing that, like, kind of tried and true, but you got to put in a shit ton of effort and grit in terms of getting an end result,
Yeah.
But then I love the imagination of people like Mobius, Drouet,
of course,
Weitzen, Frazetta. So, like, that's kind of what I'm drawing from, is I want to keep learning privately a lot of these watercolor techniques that you would typically see in, like, I don't know, maybe a gallery, but a lot of times, like, those kind of like neighborhood art markets. Like, I would want to be like the best of those, but I don't know, man. I'm just a sucker for, like, dissecting all those watercolor techniques. And I haven't even tried oil. I'm kind of just really happy in the lane I'm in, because I feel like I can come up with a unique result with enough practice. But that's kind of where I'm at,
Yeah, that's the way to be. And I think that you'll know when you feel like moving on, and you might not ever. And then one day you'll just get over something that you're working on currently. You'll finish it, get it off to the client, and then everything will change, But yeah, all of the it's funny too, because I could be presumptuous and say that like you're being slowly drawn to nature and to like the real world of drawing. Meaning, you know, you mentioned landscapes. I don't do landscapes either, but there's so much you can learn from them. I do sketches in my backyard and stuff like that. The way that, you know, light and forms react and shadows and yada, yada, yada. So it could be there. It might just be a little seed already. You know what I mean? You might be at the farmer's market before you know it.
I know that's what's kind of tricky too, is because it's like at the same time, you know, I'm trying to get work in the metal scene, but then all of a sudden you're doing shit that like grandma's like. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, but you did mention something interesting, is that you like the imagination of certain guys, and I think that's why I'm so drawn to those old academics too, and typically people ask me for that kind of stuff. They want wild shit, so I do have to make it up. That's just a good way to put it, is all.
Totally. Before we get into the next question and stuff, do you happen to have some water nearby you?
I don't. I'm getting cotton mouth.
Go ahead and grab some water.
I'll be back.
So when did you start really getting interested in like Sargent's work and like some of the more like portrait type artists? Because like I can't think of a better portrait artist than Sargent. Like he really is kind of as good as it gets.
I agree with you.
Yeah. When did you start getting into that?
He's the painter's painter, you know. It's immaculate. It's the most beautiful shit you'll ever see. And seeing him on a computer does zero justice, or one of his books, even the high quality books. You have to see him in the museum. There's a bunch in New York and Boston. I don't know exactly the point I found him, but the evolution I sort of blabbered on about has the discoveries in there of different painters and stuff. You know, it went from Burney writes and I did Jeff Darrow type stuff for a really long time too. I did an entire comic book like Jeff Darrow because I worshipped him.
With all lines, man.
Yeah, and that's why I liked it.
Now.
Yeah, it was kind of just think of stuff, just think of more stuff, just think of stuff, and it was tons of fun. But then I think a lot of the heavy hitting academic painters popped up immediately, Rubens and Van Dyke and those guys, and I still love them. They're my backgrounds on my phones and stuff. I think as I was listening to Mark Carter tell me about how to paint still lifes and learn how to paint at the same time, I realized that the way he was applying color didn't look like the academics that I worshipped so much, you know? Rubens is very smoothed off, and Van Dyke's very smooth, and they're fucking beautiful. They look like cake, you know? Yeah. But I noticed that when I was doing this life in the studio while watching his videos, these things looked more like Rembrandt, I guess you could say, that chunky, confident brushstroke type thing, you know, values next to values, no bullshit, no wiping around. And I really liked that. And this isn't a dig on academic at all. I worship those guys too, still to this day. I've got a Rubens right here I'm referencing for a current painting. It's about this sort of, it's about application, I think, for me. Yeah. And I think Sargent popped in there somewhere, you know, as I was looking at, you know, just more impressionists and stuff, and he rolls in there. Also, a lot of instructors online mention him. I think it's difficult to ignore his work if you appreciate art in any capacity. He fucking destroyed it, you know? Yeah. So yeah. And, I try to pick up any notes I can on him too. I read all of his journals and look at his preliminaries. And, one of the most interesting ones that I just, saw the other day, I forget the name of the painting, but it's three sisters, I think. And they're kind of in this, it goes from, you know, one of the sides in the middle, and then kind of goes down into this, all their dresses are connected. It's just three heads, you know, and then a really dark space in the top. And I just saw his sketch for that, which is hilarious. And it's just a squiggle, and you can see the girls' heads, and you can tell he didn't pick up his pencil once. And then there's a painting that you can barely see in the back that's on the wall behind the sitters, and there's just 2 lines for that in his painting. But it makes a lot of sense to me because it's how I've been starting pictures. I generally will just darken giant swaths of land, you know what I mean, and then drag and run an eraser through it, and then start kind of smushing and smashing and baking it all together and seeing what light I can manipulate, you know. Going off on tangents again. You gotta get me under control.
This is how the show goes, man. No, it's fine. So let me ask you this: what's maybe your favorite art gallery experience or like museum?
It's got to be between. I mean, everything in Europe. I went to Europe once with my wife in 2019. As we all know, it's epic. The Louvre. I don't know how to pronounce it, but the d'Orsay, it's the museum in the train station out there now. Tons of great shit. All of that changed me. And I think that had a lot to do with painting too. I came back and I was like, I can't do this shit anymore. I got to learn how to paint, you know?
Yeah.
But in the United States, I mean, I have the Met rivals the Louvre, I think, you know, in so many ways. And also the Garner Museum in Boston is incredible. Must go if you haven't been, for sure. Austin doesn't have anything really, which is unfortunate. But I go to Houston and Dallas and poke around, you know?
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. You got anything good in Atlanta out there?
We have the High Museum, which has some good exhibits sometimes. I think it's a nice facility. I'm not drawn to all the stuff in the permanent collection. Not that it's not good. It's just doesn't speak to me sometimes. But there's a lot of cool stuff. I mean, I like that it's also a blend too. Like, as much as we're talking about, like, you know, impeccably technique focused like art, I sometimes am really drawn to like folk art and like lowbrow art too, like stuff that's not trained at all. It's got its own charm and creativity to it that kind of entices me. So sometimes I see stuff like that really blows me away, or stuff that's kind of like in between. I recently went to the I think it's the AGO. I was in Toronto for some work, and I got introduced to the group of 7, which are like these Canadian painters around like the 20th century. Have you ever heard of any of those guys?
I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe by name.
We don't learn about them in America very much, but I'll send you some stuff. There's a guy named Tom Thompson who proceeded just a little bit, but a really interesting, kind of like post-impressionist, like landscape painter. And their whole goal was just capturing like the Canadian wilderness. But like, I got a whole new appreciation for like Canadian art. And then there was a lot of indigenous art there too, which that's really cool and unique.
Very badass. So is that it's like the very bold red, like the, excuse my ignorance, but like totem poles and shit like that from like, right, eagles on top of eagles and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I saw 2 giant totem poles at the General Museum, the Royal Ontario Museum. Yeah. But I mean, with indigenous art, it's just like it is like in America too. Every tribe has their own style.
So cool.
So like the stuff that's like really far out, more like in Vancouver, I find that style really, really aesthetically pleasing. It does have more of that totem pole. And once again, I'm ignorant to it too. I just know I like it and it looks really unique.
That's all that matters.
But really cool stuff. And then I went to Madrid and I saw Garden of Earthly Delights, a lot of Goya.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's the Prado?
Velázquez.
Prado?
Dude. Prado. The
Prado.
Las Meninas by Velázquez is so much better in person. It's giant.
I'm sure. Yeah. Dude, all these things are every fucking time I see one of these in person, it's unbelievable because you fall in love with them on our phones or on TV or however magazine. But it's hard to fathom how much better they can get in person. It's crazy. Unbelievable, really, you know?
Yeah, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
You make me want to bring out all my study books after this. Man.
Yeah.
I got a shit ton of them.
Well,
Bring
if
out
I could,
some figurative drawing books. I got like
right.
6 of them.
I do want to say something about learning and like continuing to draw realistic human beings and even landscapes or anything to an accurate degree. After going through so many different academic instructors, online courses and stuff, and I don't like to say I'm self-taught because I've gotten everything from everyone else online or here in the studio, but you know what I mean. But I think that getting Impressionism earlier, I think would be helpful for everybody looking back at all this shit. I think Impressionism doesn't have, what's the right word for it? It's underrated, I guess you could say. And I think that's because there's painters that have excelled at it that aren't very like risque or whatever, you know what I mean? They're not drawing demons and cool shit. They're drawing flowers and lotuses and stuff like that in gardens.
Yeah.
And that's not very appealing. It's not appealing to me either, but I find it beautiful now in a respectful way. But I think there's ways to, it's just easier to draw things using effects and masses rather than trying to construct it by line and squares and ovals and cones. I was on a podcast with Matt Bailey, this several years ago, and I kept going on and on about spheres and cones and blocks and stuff, and that's how I draw everything, and that's how I did draw everything. But after discovering this other way to do things, it knocks all that shit right out of the water, and you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. You just draw by affecting things on the picture. It's difficult to describe. I just started a Patreon where
all that construction paid off in terms of making this shit like, because like I get what you mean, but to get to the level you're at, you have to basically learn something a shit ton, and then deconstruct, and then do it again, and then deconstruct. I mean, that's kind of how learning art works, right?
Yes, you're right. Yeah, and I don't mean to discredit even what I've learned from all of this stuff. And I couldn't tell you what I would have done had I not done it. I don't know where I'd be without that stuff. So I can't say definitively this is the way. But I do wish I had been introduced to Impressionist technique sooner, I guess is a better way to probably put it. Oh, totally. Because I definitely am I know that I'm a strong draftsman. I guess I can. It's nice, and it's one of the reasons I still sell graphite work to clients and stuff, and I usually give them the option of graphite or oil depending on how they're feeling. And I think that without those guys like Steve Houston and stuff, who knows where I'd be, because I definitely have a pretty good understanding of how to draw someone head to toe, no matter what position they're in, and Impressionism requires a reference. And I still use references for everything I do. I just, instead of looking over and drawing a leg like this, I'm sort of just doing the background like this, and then getting in, I could go on about it, but Impressionism.
Oh, totally, man.
Yeah.
Oh, this is really cool. In terms of art then, like, so what maybe is a common quality of a piece of art that would not speak to you nowadays? So something that would not interest you. I'll just leave it at that.
I'm trying to think of something I don't like as far as artwork is concerned, or any art form, I don't know. Do you have anything that comes to mind?
I don't know. I just feel like everyone has a unique answer to this. So, okay, there's so many different ways of judging art, and I mean this in quotes because we're just having conversation. Like,
sure.
Stuff, don't take it too seriously.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, like this is also supposed to be relaxing setting for anyone watching.
Yeah.
I mean, you could judge art on many levels, right? So there's what are they trying to say? What's the intent? What level of creativity is in there? And then there's obviously the technical side. How well is it executed?
Sure.
I'd say it's funny because I seek art education outside of just having these conversations, but I'd be remiss to say that I don't. Every conversation I have, it shapes how I perceive art, actually. So
Yeah.
I just had a conversation with somebody else, and I'm leaving thinking art is limitless. Art is all about the idea and the creativity, and the execution is just a vehicle to deliver that.
Sure.
And I don't mean this as a criticism of you. This conversation makes me think the vehicle is extremely exciting and important. And when you want to build that vehicle and pursue that technical mastery, not diminishing the other part, but like both can exist, right?
Sure,
So like
absolutely.
every conversation has those lessons. So right now, I would say somebody who basically says, "Oh, I draw hands like this because it's my style," instead of learning the proper way or drawing feet.
Heard that, yeah.
So like that would be something that I would be like, well, it's lazy art, right?
Yeah.
But you could also be critical of stuff that just has no meaning and it's all about the technical chops. And you could have asked me yesterday and I'd be like way more into, I don't know, stuff that just is a little more lowbrow and just like eccentric and just fucking off the wall and just makes you think like, whoa, that's weird.
I think that, well, what comes to mind, and thank you for your description, it helped me clear my mind a little bit. What comes to mind is like what do you call it? Ultra realism and all that stuff. The super close up of people's lips and nostrils and shit. I just don't see the fun in it. It's not romantic.
Sweat bead of Rock's forehead. You know, the Rock or something.
Yeah, but in the same hand, I can go, this guy is badass. You know what I mean? Like, look at what he's doing. I just don't. I don't go and buy the book that I can drool over of that stuff. You know, and even before I was painting and drawing with graphite as much as I am now, I always had old master books around and stuff. There was always something to learn in there, even when I was doing pen and ink stuff, and even more cartoony stuff. You know, there's like just composition alone, you can borrow that into your ink work, and it'll translate if it's done well, you know. But yeah, I think I'll go with the ultra realistic dudes. Yeah.
I know what you mean.
But yeah, I mean, I guess nothing's as irritating as someone who thinks they're better than they are, maybe. I guess if you wanted to really start to cut it up, you know. But I don't really come across anyone like that very often. You know what I mean?
Not often in the professional sphere because they've had so many times of falling down that they get humble from it. Yeah.
And I usually will see someone like that on Instagram or something. And I know that one day if they keep working, they'll wake up at it, they'll grow out of that, you know. And humility is like the key in all of this, you know. I think it's the only reason keeps you going, and you learn a little bit every day, a little bit more, little wins, you know. And knowing that you don't know shit is definitely helpful, you know. Keeps your eyes open.
Yeah, that's a good point, because let's just think ego and confidence and how they're related, right? So you obviously don't want to have a big ego because no one likes that. Hard to work with clients.
Sure.
You're not going to be happy yourself, right?
Yeah.
But there can also be an element of like, you got to know your worth.
Of course.
You know? So that can be kind of a tricky lesson too. Is like a level of self-awareness on where you're at, right?
Sure.
So I don't know. I feel like you're probably a much better painter than you think you are, but that's also a good thing because it's going to keep making you better. But that's just kind of my general gut feeling after talking with you for like 55 minutes.
I appreciate it. I know I can hold my own to some degree in certain things, right? It's like this thing I keep working on every day, the last month or whatever. Let me just say it about all of them because they're all this way. I start strong with the graphite. I feel good about it. I go into the painting. The start is pretty nice. It all looks like what I've planned. And when it gets down to those details and stuff, things start falling apart because of my sort of, is the right word? Is it like a dissonance between the two techniques maybe? Academic and Impressionism don't mesh the whole way.
Yeah. You could go too tight and then it's like, oh, it's uncanny, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then it kind of throws everything off. And I think the next painting I start, I'm going to start it the same way, but I might even try to do some line work on this next one with paint. I guess what I was going to say is I can tell that I'm getting a little better every time I finish a painting, even with all the headaches and all of the crying that goes on with it and depression. Yeah. There are passages that I can see that I would have never been able to accomplish it before, whether it's a green going into a reddish zone or a red and orange or whatever it is. There's things that looking at the first painting that couldn't have been done, and it's just fun to always discover those things and then borrow it and use it again, usually overusing it. Whenever I learn something, everything will just be green and red because I learned how to make a good green and red relationship, so you got to be careful there too.
I know what you mean,
but
I do a lot of purple into red into blue, like I fall into traps too, man. Yeah. And then orange highlights, that kind of shit.
Yeah, one tiny blue highlight will look great, and then all of a sudden I'm just bluing everything out,
Yeah. That's why I was glad the latest painting I finished, I actually threw in some green, and I usually avoid green a lot. Like, I look at my watercolor palette, and the greens are, like, barely touched. I'm like, all right, good. I'm moving on.
How was starting watercolor? How was, like, the first time you're going, I like this, I'm going to try it. When did you try it for the first time?
I think a lot of people try watercolor, just like growing up, but you're never given the right materials to actually succeed or the right mindset. And look, we both have opinions, right? That's what makes it fun. But I think there's a lot of really bad watercolor out there.
Like, I would agree with you.
There's a lot that I hate. And I think it's a bad rap. Because I think a lot of the technique, like if people don't know what they're doing, everything looks way too stiff. And like, if anything looks, what's the word? Detached, like the grass is detached from the house and all that. Like nothing's done with like a sweeping motion. It drives me fucking crazy. It looks like shit.
Yeah.
And but if you can get watercolor techniques right and you know what you're doing, you're working on the right surface, that's incredibly important. You have to work on watercolor, in my opinion, like get the look that I like. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna say I've been thinking about getting into it. That's all. That's why I was curious.
Oh, yeah. I could go on a whole tangent, but I don't know. I love it because it does feel like a performance, and you can finish a painting in one sitting.
Right.
And it's like every paint, you're never going to do a perfect painting with watercolor because it's so unforgiving. So it's just like every time you show up and you just try your best, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. Like watercolor is a good teacher in that mindset, and any good watercolor instructor, they teach that way too. Like, it's okay if this painting sucks. Do it again tomorrow.
Right.
Like, because that's a hard lesson for up and coming artists is like, you think the drawing that you just finished is your best one and that's what you're measured by. But really it's, first of all, people probably aren't measuring you at all at that stage. Just keep doing it and enjoy it.
Right.
But watercolor teaches you to deal with that failure on a very quick thing. Whereas we're talking about pen and ink, man, you can spend, the thing that pen and ink doesn't teach well is, and I'm going on tangent. We're both on tangents, right?
I love it.
The thing with pen and ink doesn't teach you well is that you can get so caught up in the rendering and the details, and that's the largest portion of time that you're spending on it. You're compromising potentially daily sketching and gesture and the shit that actually is going to matter to the success of what that piece is, not if you got that blade of grass just right.
Yeah.
So all that rendering time, it actually slows you down from getting better as an artist because you're just focusing on the shit that like it's more
It's
like
just,
punching a clock than like the actual performance.
yeah,
I don't know if this is
minutia.
hitting across for the audience, but composition and the first 5 minutes of your piece is incredibly more important than the 100 hours for like a extremely rendered piece.
Amen. It's, you should be able to get your composition down in one sitting in less than 3 hours every time. I wouldn't be able to do that in ink. Ink is just a time consuming thing.
Yeah.
But I've also been thinking about getting back into pen and ink now that I know all this other shit. So
Yeah,
I don't know,
yeah.
maybe I'll prove myself wrong, but it's also more enjoyable when you find a way to get the big picture down quickly. It means that it's going to look good till the end if you can keep your head on straight.
Oh, totally.
And I like the spontaneity, and I like the I like how, I don't know the right word, but I like that watercolor is a one and done thing, and if it's bad, it's bad.
Yeah,
I
you're
just I like
detached from the outcome.
I like being slapped in the head by it. You know what I mean? And
Oh yeah.
you just get a new piece. You know, if it sucks, you just start a new one. You know, there's not a lot of commitment there, other than I assumed if it's like we were kids, you drop water in each little each little bucket. You know what I mean? I don't know. Yeah, I've been just curious, the color mixing and all this stuff, and I do my graphite work on watercolor paper.
Would you like cold press or hot press? What do you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the pink pad arches. It's just the best. It's so
hot press,
forgiving.
right?
Oh, is it hot press? Yeah.
Wait, I had to
pink
look.
one.
I love arches, dude. I have
So
rough
beautiful.
as well. I use all that stuff.
I have it right here in these drawers, but yeah, it's the pink one. That's what I always give me, the pink one.
Yeah.
It's just very forgiving. It takes the graphite beautifully. It's easy to blend. It's easy to erase. You can hammer at it and it never gives, you know. But yeah, the start is important for sure. And again, that's why I think I've been a little obsessed about Impressionism, because that's how I've been taught by these guys. Or that's by observing what they did. That's what's teaching me, and that's how they did it. And that's what I seem to love most about painting, is getting these colors down right away. And it really works well in the studio when I'm doing still lifes or doing portraits of friends and stuff like that, or myself. You get results immediately. Before dinner, you can have a painting that looks pretty good.
Yep.
When I guess, you know, with construction drawing and stuff, it does do that, because you know the steps. You understand that this sort of cube type face head thing into shoulders and excuse me, will work, and you know what a good start will look like. However, with Impressionism, it just starts to look good. All the colors are there, all the effects are there. Yeah, I'll keep talking about it.
Oh, dude, we're nerding out. So there's that prevailing theory in art that artists oftentimes are either more of a valuist or a colorist in terms of their natural leaning and like maybe strengths. Where do you think you would fall in that? Do you think you're more values driven?
Yeah.
To begin with?
Yeah. And I think, well, that's what I assume right now currently, because I have strong graphite drawings.
Yeah.
But I would argue my paintings are not as strong. And I think that they're strong because they have good value judgments and tonal
most important
placements.
thing.
I think so. And I try to get that to translate to paint. It works sometimes ish. I still think that there's a long ways to go. But yeah, and the reason I didn't choose color is because I bang my head against the wall daily about it. If for anyone who's interested in learning how to mix paint, please go to drawmixpaint.com. Mark Carter will show you so fucking fast. It's insane. It's mindless almost how easy he's made it.
And mostly oil focus, or it could be applied to like acrylics as well, you think?
Yeah, I think it's fundamental to color in general. I've never messed with acrylics. I assume it would work with watercolor. I know it works with pastels, you know. But yeah, he just teaches you what you need on the palette and how to get, even if you go way off course on your, let's say you're trying to mix a light blue and all of a sudden it turns like dark brownish green, he just shows you how to correct it very easily. You know, he's got a really simple color wheel, highly recommended. But even knowing all of this stuff, and I'm still complaining about not knowing color, you know, yeah, so I'd go with that.
Yeah.
How about you? Do you feel like
man. Sometimes I feel like
the color down?
I don't know. I mean, I know what I think, but people can make their own determination on the quality of my work. But like, I don't think values were really encoded in my brain until last like 4 years. Even then, like, I think color just kind of came a little more instinctual, and like, I kind of have learned how to do it intuitively. Like, I get the color wheel, I get the concepts, but like, for some reason, when I like have the watercolor thing out, I just like my hand just knows which color to go to get exactly what I want, and it works a lot of the time.
I would ride with that. Probably I would keep doing that.
Yeah, I don't know, but like values, like for a long time, I didn't even understand the concept, because like so much of my inspiration, it's similar to you with like comics and stuff, but like for me, and like clearly you're a fan as well, but like tattoo art was very important in shaping my appreciation of art, specifically like traditional and Japanese stuff. Yeah. And like in a lot of cases, that stuff isn't like highly value driven. It's more color and shape driven. So like that kind of like was where I learned a lot of my stuff, was just studying that and just being, you know, rebellious teenager and just like being really into that stuff. And
it's beautiful stuff.
An image, you know.
Looking at your work on Instagram, I think that you have a good eye for design, and design is as important. If it could be the same as composition, really, design and composition. But if you look at like old Greek potteries and stuff like that, Paul Ingebrigtsen gave examples of this on one of his programs. Where you look at the pottery and everything is just it's only two tones, you know, and the figures are placed just beautifully, you know. There's a circle where there should be a circle. There's not a hard line where there shouldn't be one. But looking at your thumbnails in your feed, you have a lot of that. They're pleasing even on small itty bitty scale. They look like I think it was Benson who said, if try to imagine painting it on a plate. Also, this is like 1867 or something like that. So didn't have many other options. But yeah, like if you think about designing inside of a plate, it kind of helps you focus in and hone in within the square of your canvas or whatever it is you're working on, you know. Anyways, I think you got that. And you're saying that you feel like you're drawn to color and you have an eye for it. I would lean into that daily if that's the case, you know, if it's enjoyable, obviously, you know.
We'll see. It's funny. I get at least online, I get more attention for my black and white stuff. So I'll just do a blend because I enjoy both.
Doing both,
But yeah, the watercolor I think is more liberating, and there's a little more like risk in it too, you know. Whereas the pen and ink, it's more like putting in the time, like crafting lines. Like I do enjoy the meticulous nature of it, but that's what I love about it is like there's no net, right? So like there's this big piece that I've been procrastinating because first of all, big Arches sheet is like $20. Also, if I F it up, I have to redraw it back on there. That's at least 3 hours. Yeah. So I have to get my chi right. Yeah. Get my sponge out, get my big ass squirrel brushes, get everything right. And then it's just diving in, and it's like it feels like fucking Jackson Pollock, dude. And then you step away and you're like, all right, that's my first layer, and that's the most important thing.
Do you do line work of any sort, pencil or with the watercolor themselves, and get
because I still like tight aspects in my work, so like I have to do pencils that are pretty tight or like pen for what I'm looking for, and then it's who's that?
Chuco. This is Chuco. Yeah. Looking good.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh no, that's fine.
That's Bigfoot.
Oh. How many you got back there?
Just two. Wild
but I
animals.
let the wet on wet transitions and the color transitions and the soft edges, I let that just happen naturally with the watercolor, and then
so it runs together, and you get different values and color arrangements between the two that you place.
Yeah, like let me show you real quick.
Yeah. So yeah, like I guess with application of watercolor, I'm curious, darks before lights, or is there any rules like that? Do they?
Oh yeah.
Do you look forward to them running together to create new colors and tones, or is this, you have to avoid certain spots? I imagine with lighter colors as a guess, right?
It's everything, all the above.
Yeah.
So you have to work light to dark, but you can use dark colors in your palette and your wash. You just have to be conscious of how much water is on the paper if you're doing wet on wet, and how much water you're using in the palette. So like you have to it takes some time to get the feeling right of, do I have enough paint to water mixed here, and how much water is on my surface, and how dry is it? It's a fucking ticking time bomb, man.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing, is you have to be conscious of the wetness of the page at any point in time. So like I do not get in as deep of a flow state with any other type of art besides watercolor, because I have no space to think about anything else. Not to build this up like it's fucking
no. This
with
is
Keanu Reeves or something.
Well,
it feels like that.
You're speaking my language. I mean, I love it. And I feel like I could have fun with it, I guess, is all I want to say. You know what I mean? It just seems like something I need to try, Instant
color relationships, So like it'll teach you things to make your oil paintings better for sure. So like,
hell yeah.
And I think the other thing is a good watercolor painting has a lot of big shapes, and then you just build upon that. So like this green shape has some holes in it.
Yeah.
I want to preserve the white of the paper, but I wanted to then build upon it. So like that's just all one big wash. So you think about how many layers are on top of it. So like for this section, it's about 3 layers. Mm-hmm. There's like, the purples and the blues. I have like all these puddles mixed up on my palette, and then the page is wet, and then they basically connect through the water on the page.
That thing is beautiful, dude. I mean,
Thank you.
I knew what it was right away. And I love that the light's showing through on the top. Those kind of little effects are what make people think you're doing magic,
You got to preserve the white of the paper. Nice. That's very important. And then this is like a whole different style, but I'm still using wet on wet techniques, and this is huge.
Let's see it. Wow.
There's little spotlights of red touching the yellow, which touches the green, and they're just like little hints. And then like for instance, I love this area because this is only one wash. It's hard to see here, but there's just very light red touching yellow, which meets the green, and like the water, as long as you know what you're doing, the water will make those connections on the paper. So you just you wet it with a squirrel brush or a sponge, and then it's all about
experimenting. I imagine lots of experimenting,
and then like knowing when to not fuss with it. You know what I mean by fussing?
Oh, I'd be fussing. I fuss constantly.
You can't fuss with watercolor. If you make a mistake in the mark and the water dry time is too late, you got to live with it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I like the stakes of it, man. It's exciting. It reminds me once again, like I think that's one part of. I know tattooers hate it, but the permanence of tattooing, there's a permanence to watercolor that I kind of find enticing too.
I found that to be part of the headache about pen and ink is that it's every line is a huge commitment kind of. I excelled at it and I had a lot of fun with it while it was my thing. But I think that's where like oils are not easy. But I think that I think people make them more complicated. They make them seem more complicated than they are.
They do. They seem scary. for some reason.
Dude, they're not. They're very forgiving too. And it's better than anything I've ever played with, you know? Anything you can imagine, you can make happen. And it's kind of unbelievable when you all of a sudden you've made this little passage of color that it's sitting right in front of you. It's weird because you've only seen like masters do it, you know, and suddenly you're kind of doing it too a little bit. And I don't know how many times I'll mess up on a painting. It's got to be, I would say like 100 times probably in different spots, and you can just wipe it away, you know. And that is what they recommend doing. You get it off of there and you start it over. You just do a new pass and it'll look right the second time if you're doing it correct, you know. But if the one thing I will say about it is that if you're remotely feeling like kind of lazy about something, you can't do it. I mean, I do it tired all the time. I have to work every day, but you have to think about each step every single time. It's not, can't just throw shit up there because it'll look like it's thrown up there mindlessly, and you want it to look intentional. And so there is that, you know. But being a beginner without proper training or a mentor, you kind of have to do a lot of, I'm just saying the whole thing is guesswork constantly. So doing something kind of like you were describing with lights coming through this, that, and the other thing, I'll be aware of that and I'll attempt to start doing it and it'll start happening. And then you'll kind of lose, maybe it's not even that you're thinking about something else. It's just that you're not thinking enough about what you're doing. And you'll do one color next to something that looks good up there and the entire painting will flip inside out. And sometimes you won't even be able to find what happened.
Because you're so focused on a section, right? Yeah.
And you have to always look all over the place at once. Everything is a weight problem, you know? And that goes for values in any sort of drawing. You know, if everything is happening over here, it could be good for you, but it also could leave this space to feel like the viewer is falling off the edge of the can, you know? So everything I've been doing, even prior to painting, has always been based on some type of classical work that I admire. And only because I can trust that. I can trust the generations of people that have kept it alive century after century. That's inarguable. You know what I mean? You can't, you know, if it was bad art, it would have died a couple of years after the guy died himself, you know?
Right.
And so I just find paintings and drawings that I like and just try to build compositions off of what they've done already, you know? Why try to invent a new composition when there's already 5,000 brilliant ones out there, you know? Especially if you're in the middle of trying to reach a deadline. They've got some weird demands that maybe you have a lot of other things you need to focus on, like how to draw a naked woman upside down is what I'm currently working on. So I just went to Rubens. I know he draws nudes all the time. You know what I mean? It's not quite the figure that I want to see myself doing in 5 years, but it'll work for right now. And it's working okay. You know, does it
almost feel like collage in a sense, because you're taking from different like old public domain, like Renaissance paintings and stuff?
Yeah. And that's kind of, if I'm honest, that's like the unfortunate part in my head about it, is that, I don't want to keep piecemealing everything, but you kind of have to I want to not ever stop doing record covers for metal bands. It's my favorite thing to do. Metal drives me constantly throughout the day, throughout the night. It's all I think about. It's all I listen to. And to be able to contribute to the genre is a huge honor. Right. And so I don't see myself ever getting out of that really, but, trying to, deliver what these guys need for their covers from a realistic point of view is near impossible. I have had friends come over and pose for me. I've taken pictures of myself trying to swing things around in the air and like, I'm not muscular, so I don't have like the greatest physique for a barbarian on the top of a mountain for Eternal Champion, but you know, you'll figure out stuff for them. And usually you can find it in other paintings. Also there's lots of places online where you can find real photographs of people and but then you're also getting into murky water by referencing things from your laptop or your desktop, because it's not what you need to. The resolution's crazy, you know. Whites
Right.
are as bright as the sun, and darks are darker than anything you've ever could paint. So I am forced to do piecemeal type stuff, section by section, but I am forming my own way of enjoying it and trying to use what I know about Impressionism to get those things that I've borrowed together onto one picture. You know, you can't just take a figure of Delacroix and a figure of Rubens and make them live in the same universe, you know. One Delacroix paints with greens and blues and all these crazy fucking grays and browns, and Rubens paints in these really, you know, very pink and pinkish oranges and reds. It would look insane. So when I'm using a Rubens in one of my paintings, I just have to, I'll keep the Delacroix next to me, and I'll try to borrow from both of them. I'll color sample on top of glass, on top of the prints, and try to borrow from both the guys and make my own thing work in the middle. Yeah, I felt like a long ass answer.
Or I guess another approach, you could just, I'm not telling you what to fucking do here, but like,
oh, please.
You could take all the saturation, the color out, then you just have the values and the shapes, and then you just work off the color scheme that you already come up with. Because to me, once again, the values, the like forms, and like that to me is always still the hardest part.
Yeah. And that's essentially what I do with the graphite first. You know, I make a monochromatic study, and it's always very helpful, but it's not as helpful as I need it to be. So just yesterday I was talking to my lady about, I just need to do more preliminary oil paintings. I need to do the graphites. I need to do several oil paintings and then go into the final canvas, you know. I think it's the only way to do it. Even if I wasn't realizing the entire figure from one end to the other, at least testing her skin color, her shadows next to the background of a starry night, that kind of stuff. See what these blues and greens and pinks and oranges are going to do next to each other before I sit down for the day, that kind of stuff, you know. And that's not an unusual practice. I just haven't. No, I'm just now getting there, you know. I'm getting to realize it.
You did a watercolor study before every oil painting. You could maybe down the road adopt that, you know.
Yeah, it's another reason
a lot faster.
I'm curious about watercolor. Yeah, and oil pastels too. Very easy to tackle. They emulate oils pretty well. They're fairly cheap, you know. So there's that too, you know.
I feel like I'm giving you all this unsolicited advice, and I'm like,
no, I love it, dude. This is great. I'm having a good time. I could do this for hours.
I know. Yeah, we have a lot in common, despite our art, I think, looking very different. So, like, do you have when you're not working, like, do you have a hard shut off and you're like not doing any art and you're like playing video games and unwinding, or do you find that like it all kind of blends together and you're kind of always a whirlwind doing some kind of artwork?
It could be both. I don't. Well, I'm always thinking about it.
That never escapes you.
Yeah. So I get into video games to get way away from it, and also, I mean, I've been with my wife forever. We were friends long before we got married, and like, she's awesome. You know, when she gets home, I usually like am pretty stoked to just go hang out, get away from this stuff, and hang out with her. But I'll usually bring the baggage right into her, you know, and just start complaining about what I've been struggling with in here, which she's awesome for sponging up, you know. But yeah, I do a lot of studying, reading at night. I read old discourses from old painters. Reynolds has a really good one that's really important. Even old Da Vinci ones, and Kenyon Cox. Lots of good reads. Malay's diaries. So I try to just ingest anything these guys were thinking about, really, and I think it translates in here, whether it's like calming or, you know, a lot of times it's really nice to hear that these guys struggled too.
Right.
And I think I look for that. I want to hear them complain about it, because it's easy to fall into some kind of belief that they all just were shitting this stuff out left and right, and it just wasn't the case. Yeah, George.
It is sometimes how it's taught, though, where it's like they're legends, they're beyond brilliant, and it's like they were humans who struggled too. Art's not easy for anyone.
I think that, and from a lot of the reading, I get the idea that some of it is innate, especially like color appreciation stuff. But I don't think any of it can't be learned if you have the time, and you have to love it. Yeah, I don't think that anyone would want to do this if they didn't love it. But it seems like all of it is very what's the right word? Explicable. Like you could explain almost everything you do about any portion of it. I think that often like concepts are sometimes the most difficult thing to figure out. But because I'm fortunate enough to have a job doing this, I get the concepts from the clients, so they come to me with some idea, and then I get to just run with it. Sometimes I try to do stuff in between jobs whenever I can. If something hits me, I will, but for the most part, they keep me busy with it. Sorry, where were we at?
We were talking about how like even the legends had difficulties with stuff.
Yeah.
And I guess you talk a little bit about those for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like, everyone should look it up. I think it's important for any type of medium. There's a painter called Frank Benson, also part of the Boston School. Paul Ingebrigtsen compiled all of his quotes, these letters to his daughter who he was teaching how to paint. And it's called Benson's Letters to His Daughter. And it's just quote after quote after quote. There's got to be 120 of them or something like that in this little PDF. And each one of them is like world changing. And to me, it was. And when I started reading them, I would go through, I get this one. I see what he's talking about here. And there'd be some that I didn't know what he was talking about. And then I heard Paul Ingebrigtsen saying something about it later, about how if you don't understand what he's saying, you're just not there yet, but you will be. Yeah. And then once you are, then it'll make sense to you. And then it's funny. I read it in line at the post office. I read it at the grocery store. I read it to bed. All constantly just massaging these things that he was saying into my head. And I am slowly getting it all down. I don't think there's anything in there I haven't come across in my own work where it either hasn't frustrated me or that I felt the same, like the sentiment that he's trying to express to her, whether it's flat shadows or, noodling up colors that you don't know, like smearing color is never a good idea, that kind of stuff, yeah. But he does talk about. This is readily available
online?
Yeah, I think so. You would find it through, I think if you Googled Paul Ingebrigtsen, which is Ingbretson, and Boston School, he has a blog that he like kind of sometimes updates and stuff. And I believe the PDF link is in there somewhere. And you can also find his YouTube page. And I think he has links there as well. Yeah. Highly recommended stuff. But he does express the hardships, is where we're talking about earlier. And it's always really nice to hear someone who really knows what they're doing complaining about the same stuff you're complaining about or troubled by, I'm at times of almost crying. So, you know what I mean? Like where it's so fucking difficult or just beyond my comprehension, where you've asked all the appropriate questions that you're capable of asking yourself, and you've done your studies and you've read all the fucking books and nothing is happening. And generally it's just good to walk away at that point. You know what I mean? And either when you come back, it'll be not that big of a deal. It's not as bad as you thought it was. Totally workable, easily fixable. or sometimes it's just a trouble spot that you have to go and study more about. You have to be specific about how you look up on Google what you're talking about, color relationships or values, and maybe you'll find the answer out in the ether, or you could just wipe the whole fucking thing and start a new chunk. Maybe I didn't like that
but
part.
don't
anyways,
wipe it in the moment of anguish, though, because it could have been good. That's the thing. Yeah,
that's a good fucking point. I'm glad you said it, because it happens, and it's because it's the first thing you want to do when something's ugly. But also, it's like maybe it's just ugly because I haven't realized the whole thing yet. Maybe if I just add a little more of something, it would actually make it. And usually that is what's going on. If something's too orange, it's just because there's something green happening next to it or something like that. But yeah, I think I just wiped something today with that same irresponsible type of behavior. Sometimes it just feels good too. Fuck it, right?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, but not a good idea. And with ink, it was always the electric eraser, but you really had to dig in there to get the ink off of the paper. I would even use razor blades to cut out chunks of the inked areas that I didn't like and peel off entire swaths of
wow. I've never done that approach. I'll just do like white corrections.
Yeah, that's helpful too. Yeah. If it's in a big area, I would just peel it off. Smaller ones too, you could usually take an X-Acto and just kind of fuzz it out. And then sometimes I would pick off any hairs that are still there from the fibers and just try to keep working, This is why it was probably to my benefit to have a scratchy, chaotic style, because wouldn't matter much if there were pieces of whole papers missing, just scribble it out and keep going.
Well, before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's pull up some of your paintings, and beyond just talking about the successes or maybe things that you really like about the paintings, maybe some things you would have done differently. Any stories about working with the band is always interesting too. So first one is Dodsrit, and this is Nocturnal Will, right? That's the name of the album?
I believe so. I'm so bad about remembering things that don't have anything to do. And this is, I sent you just the front cover of it because I didn't really like the left side of the canvas. I think I can show it to you. It's somewhere right
I got to buy the album to see it and judge you for
it. There you go. So it's always unbelievable when someone asks for work. First of all, it's the most important part of any of this, is that I'm able to do this stuff because these guys see something they like in the work that I do, and they think that I would be a good place. I would have a good place on top of their record, which is fucking insane, So, and that goes for any band of any type. It's like for me to represent your own artwork is insanity to me. But these guys were super cool about it. Didn't have many notes other than they wanted like kind of just like a snowfield. And this guy, I think they originally wanted him kind of shot up full of arrows and stuff, and kind of screwed in the snow. And I don't remember if they wanted it at night or if that was my call or not. But I had already been obsessing over, why am I forgetting his name? It looks like Baade is his last name. He's a painter, and he did a lot of like nautical type stuff at night with big stormy clouds and everything I love about painting all in one thing: big waves and big color movements and glowing moonlight and clouds. And I borrowed this from one of his paintings, the sky anyways. And then the snowfield was a total pain in the ass. I didn't have really any good references. The little like creek looking water, body of water. Yeah, it was kind of an accident, and it kind of just happened, which was nice. It was right under the moon. It was just some of the underpainting, like some of the drier colors underneath. The night I found sort of a similar reference. I think if you even Googled like kneeling black and white night digital concept art, you probably see a similar figure in your Google results. although he was black and white. And so I kind of lucked out with it. I actually borrowed a sword from Jason Tarpey, who's a vocalist of Eternal Champion, for the sword.
He makes swords, doesn't he?
Yeah. And this one was one of his prop swords that he swings around on stage.
Nice.
So I just set it up over here and tried to put some blue drapery underneath it and try to light it to get some kind of idea to see what it looks like on snow, that kind of thing. And I mean, that's pretty much all there is to it, I suppose, as far as like the thought process goes into it. There's on the left side on the back cover, they wanted a banner, sort of a torn and bloodied banner that's in the snow. I think the concept was that he was arriving back where the battle took place and that everyone was dead, something along those lines.
Well, thank God you have to do all those figures.
Yeah,
the dead bodies. That would have made it way fucking harder.
Yeah, that's another thing about sort of keeping in mind this like impressionist technique is that sometimes doing those big piles of bodies and stuff might not be too troublesome. They will be, but if you can just figure out how light falls on a bunch of different things of similar fashion, you might be able to just get by with these loose color. Yeah, that's wishful thinking though, for sure. But that was those guys are, by the way, some of the nicest people I've ever met. They sent me way too much merch when it was done. So thankful for it. And the record turned out very cool. It's like got some gold leafing around the edges and huge honor.
It's been very well received too, musically. A lot of people have been talking about it. It's
a killer record.
It's like their favorite black metal album of the year. I listened to a little bit. I thought it was awesome. Rightly
so. Yeah, it's good stuff. They know what they're doing for sure. I hope I can work with them again.
Are they Dutch?
Why am I forgetting?
They're from Amsterdam.
I think they're Norwegian. Was it Swedish? See, it's funny. I offload all information aside from painting nowadays. I just don't even. If it's not going to help me paint, I don't know if I keep it. It's funny. I have his address right here. I'm about to ship him that painting in a few days. As a matter of fact, it finally got varnished and everything. Yeah, but they're from Scandinavia of some sort.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what I love the fact that you have added warmth to a cold scene in such a successful way, and that's not easy to do. And it's also like, I mean, the colors do a lot of the lifting here in terms of like that power, but you're not throwing in anything like really crazy. Like it's a muted and earthy color scheme, but it has this atmosphere to it. So, and the atmospheric perspective on those trees in the middle there is so like subtle and brilliant. Like knowing when to restrain, I think, is a big thing of why this painting's successful. Like it doesn't have a shit ton of bodies. It doesn't have all these little elements that would have been fucking hard to make. I think, I'm not saying your client asked for that.
Sure.
But I've had enough of these conversations that I know that sometimes metal bands will be like, hey, can you just add like all these figures? And they don't realize how hard, first of all, drawing one figure is. And they're like, well, you can do that overnight. You know what I mean? So like, just like I wouldn't expect every war metal guitarist to be able to do sweeping arpeggios.
Sure.
It's kind of like sometimes folks don't have the right expectations of how hard some stuff is. So sometimes a painting like this is just perfect because plenty of room for the logo. All the qualities that make a great painting are there. And then it also doesn't have the parts that could be difficult and not worth the all that time and energy. And it would lead to a lot of anguish. You know what I mean?
I agree. Yeah, for sure. More figures means more heartache, for sure. And that's usually one of the things I say right in the beginning of any negotiation with a client. It's like, you got to tell me more. Do you want, whether you want one figure or 15, I need to kind of know a ballpark, because it requires a lot of study and preliminary research and sketches and stuff. But while you've mentioned some of the atmosphere and stuff, I learned a lot about how blue and brown alone can go a long way. They're complementary to each other. They mix I guess for anyone who doesn't know, it's like every color has a complementary color, all yada, yada, yada. And sometimes they have several. But with brown and blue, it was really fun because I could just keep brown, white, and blue on the canvas and really not touch much else. These are all just brownish blues and bluish browns with whites. And so it ended up being really fun. This was like the first time I had ever discovered that these things talk to each other the way they do. And you mentioned the tree line being a stronger part of it, and I struggled really hard with that, and it changed probably 7 or 8 times. And I think I settled on this one just because it looked the least fucked up, to be honest with you.
Well, hey man, it was worth it then.
I appreciate it so much. And all of these things are are just experiments too. And I'll often it's when I'm working with somebody on these things, you know, I know that I have to stay on course to some degree to what they want, but I take a lot of liberties, and I try to trust in my own ability to show them if it's changed much from their initial idea. I need to make it really well done, because I don't want to change it and have it look like shit, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I could probably go on about a particular painting for a long time, but I did learn a lot on this one for sure.
When did you finish this one? Because I know the album was released this year, but that doesn't mean when you did it.
I think it was last summer.
Okay.
I think so.
A year's not bad in terms of the release compared to some.
Yeah, and actually, I think it got pushed back for some reason, if I remember correctly. If it wasn't last summer, it was like fallish, something like that, you know. Yeah. But yeah, a ton of fun working on it for sure. It was also, if I'll say, it was also difficult to do a single painting for both sides of a record. Like, you know what I mean? So it's bookended.
Is this a complete image?
This is half of it. This is just the front. The back side of it I cropped for Instagram, and I just kind of like the front cover more. The back was a real reach trying to get the back side done for it, you know. But the final version of it after production and everything looks nice. It's darker. It's got gold leafing on it. It's got all the tracks and all of the information at the bottom, and it turned out well.
Because when you're seeing it, it's like center stage, and it's like, I don't know if this can stand out on its own, whereas you actually play a supportive role because of all the image and information.
Yeah,
right
so there. I made sure to mark with pencil on the canvas the center where the spine would be, so I could focus on a square composition. So it would be strong in a standalone frame, you know, or at least with hopes for that.
100%.
Yeah.
So then this album, so this is Antichrist, Siege Machine, we're just going to say ASM, Vengeance of Eternal Fire.
Yeah.
It's fucking awesome.
Thanks,
I think this
man.
thing turned a lot of people's heads who hadn't seen your work before.
Yeah, it did. It's definitely an attention grabber, I think. It's all these really rich colors, and Scott is a badass. He's the drummer, vocalist. Very, very nice, very easygoing throughout this whole thing. I think, if I remember correct, initially he wanted these two guys sort of wrestling in a kind of a cave situation, with sort of like a dimly lit hall behind them, maybe, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And long story short, this is what happened. I don't know how it happened, but he mentioned that he wanted it to be colorful, like Morbid Angel's album.
I was just thinking that Blessed is Sick. Yeah, you can definitely see it.
And so when he told me that, I was immediately just like frightened, to be honest with you, because I don't typically work in a lot of bright colors. At least I haven't yet. You know, I've been very apprehensive to go too crazy with color because I'm still trying to learn so much about even simple color changes and stuff.
Yeah.
So I suppose I took it as a challenge, and I don't know if I would be able to tell that I was looking at the Morbid Angel record, but I tried to just keep a lot of bright shit happening, and that was the least I could do for them. You know what I mean? And I forget
the nod. The motion of the composition kind of reminds me of it a little bit, where it goes into the upper left corner.
Yeah. And I knew that I couldn't I couldn't paint it like that painter because I don't paint that way. But I was like, I know I could figure out a way to get some really loud things happening in here. And I borrowed the devil figure from a Bouguereau painting, his neck, shoulder, and arm, and his like rib cage. It's the Dante and Virgil painting, which I've heard people say that it reminds them of, which rightly so, because that's his shoulder for sure. And Ixion, which I forget the name of the painter. It's the direct copy of that guy's painting in his arms. And Repin has this painting of Jesus and Satan walking like on this weird landscape. It's really bizarre and really loose painting that I just always loved. And Satan's pouring out this jar of, I don't know, fire or like blood fire. And I always loved it. So I wanted to use that in there. And the Cerebus was from another painting. And so I just like to gather all these things I like about other people's work and try to push it in there and see if I can make it my own in any form, you know? I put the moon in very last because it felt empty up there, and I felt like there needed to be some of that bluish green kind of flying around a little bit.
Yeah.
But this was a huge struggle to do.
Yeah, I mean it's a tough fucking painting, but it pays off. There's one thing about it that I think is like a really bold but good move, man. That front leg on the Jesus type character, and you can even see a little bit of the reflected light of the blue hitting the top of his leg.
Oh yeah,
with that shadow. Like that's some good shit right there, man.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate it.
Nice detail.
Those kind of things.
That's a bold shadow there. You know, that takes a lot of courage to do.
It did actually, and I avoided it for several weeks before I even did it. I think it was at this point in the painting and my ability, it was acceptable at one point to just give it to them without anything in that leg, and it was kind of just brown, and I think it would have worked, but I knew that there could be something brought there at least, and I'm glad it worked out because it was first try, and that never happens. Just to mix a color and then put it on there and have it work. It was, I still don't believe I did it. And it's not that I think it's amazing. I just think that it made the effect that I wanted it to. And that to me was a win, you know? And I think it could have gone further too, with some of the lights cast on like his underneath his thigh and around his knee and stuff, but
like the chiaroscuro kind of like extreme lighting. So you mean?
Yeah. And I think on every work, graphite or oil, I have to know when to throw in the towel and just say, this is okay. You know, like I've done a lot of work here. It's an acceptable piece. I've learned a lot. I hope they like it. Let's show it to them. You know, yeah. I typically will keep clients up to date every day if I'm working on it. I'll give them time-lapse videos and photographs and give them my notes. Sometimes I'll complain about, I'll cry a little bit to them. But I think I'm mostly pleasant, you know? And these guys are always so awesome. And especially these dudes, it was crazy because I'm already a fan of these guys, and I have both the cassettes leading up to this that I'm pretty sure that's all that's available, but they're typically, you know, I don't know if you saw the last record, but it's like just a
blade thing.
Yeah. Why am I forgetting the name of the guy who drew that? I love his work, but he does lots of great shit. And for them to ask me, I almost thought that they like, are you sure you're asking the right guy to do this for you? You know, because I didn't see you working this way before. It's like, are you sure you know what I do? You know, it was a huge flip in their aesthetic for cover art, you know. But Scott loved it. He bought the original. I sent it to him like a month or two ago. He's got that hanging in his house, which is fucking crazy. It's all this stuff is crazy to me. It's unbelievable that people want this stuff, you know. Makes me happy to see it, you know.
No, it's awesome, dude. I mean, all the hard work paid off. I think it's incredible, and
thank you, dude.
A good homage to, you know, the classics that you're referencing. But obviously adding your own twist and showing it to an audience that maybe isn't as familiar with all this like really important, impactful historical art, you know.
Hell yeah. Yeah. It's way cool to hear. Thank you, dude.
One thing I did want to mention, and yeah, I'm plugging on your behalf, okay?
Yeah.
You just recently launched a Patreon. I want to make sure that any artists who are this far know that if you want to learn like some of the things on how he's doing these things, that's what you've made this available for, right?
Yeah. I went into the Patreon with full intention of not being an instructor. I don't think that, and it's not false modesty. It's nothing like that. I want to share what I know, but not preach it to you. And I don't think that there's only one way to do anything. And I think that by sharing my daily struggles on certain things and then maybe conquering them, maybe changing it, whatever the outcome, I hope that there could be some benefit to a listener or a viewer to that. I think that with graphite, I could step more into a way of instruction only because I understand it. I can command it more, you know? And even then I wouldn't, I guess I got led down the wrong path a few times by YouTubers, and maybe I'm a little bitter about it, but I don't qualify any of the like the academics that we've been talking about in this arena at all. I just what I mean is that there's some people that were just they act like they know everything and they don't, and they took me down with them, and I had to unlearn shit that they taught me, and that's the short story of it. So I just want to be careful not to do that to someone else. Like I want to just present what I know about what I'm doing currently and leave it at that. And if anyone has any questions, I'm so happy to talk to them. And I do it all day long on Instagram anyways. So I figured I may as well do in-depth questions and answers and videos. And I've been recording myself at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, every day. And I have
see the madness progress.
Yeah. So maybe we'll see something helpful in there for somebody. Of course, I would appreciate it. Any subscribers, by all means.
Totally.
Yeah.
And what are your like tiers priced at? Like, how does that work?
Well, right now I just have one. It's just $5 for support, and you get access to my daily crying and whining and anything I might have learned the last couple of days. I'm planning on doing studio tours. I'm already writing down some questions that have been asked and going to make some videos, maybe once a week, answer questions. I have a $50 tier for whales. If anyone feels like doing it, do it. You know, you get the same stuff a $5 tier gets. But I do have plans for some other mid-level tiers for prints every month, stickers, exclusives, raffles for sketches from my sketchbook, and
that's a good idea.
Yeah, live video, all that stuff. I'm hoping to get some feedback from them as I keep uploading stuff, and I'm excited to do it. It's nice to be able to sort of vent to the camera, whether someone's listening or not, you know.
Oh yeah, I know too well.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to mention any YouTube names or whatever, but I do think that's an important lesson, is choose your instructors carefully, and also know that everyone's going to have advice, and a lot of times it's not, you can get contradictory advice from very talented artists. So like, I guess, can you speak a little bit of that, some of those missteps a little bit, so maybe other people don't fall into that?
Yeah. The first starting with that thought, I would say just keep an open mind. So listen to everybody, kind of. And if you're working diligently every day, you'll start to figure out what works for you and what doesn't. And you can offload things from instructors. Every instructor usually has something important to keep and to hold and to study on and to put in your own toolkit. But many of them have more to offload than to keep. What happens if you only listen to one person is that you get stuck in a narrow thought pattern, and it's just not healthy for you or your work. I think the more the merrier, honestly. I feel like I've exhausted YouTube of everybody. Like I've tried everyone at least once. As far as I know, I've gone down all the paths. I still like to listen to all of them. I like to watch people paint regardless. There seems to always be something to pick up on, whether it's their own mental capacity during their work, how they feel about it, how they offload stuff, how they relax.
The mindset part. Yeah,
mindset.
For sure.
Yeah. And I would just tread lightly, honestly. It's weird to try to say that now because this is all I do and care about. But when you like I said earlier, if you're working every day, you'll start to see what you need too by noticing the flaws in your work and your shortcomings and where you're being lazy, or if you're not, or whatever it is, and let those things guide you. And then look for all of those things in masterwork first, and then see what kind of painters they were, read about them, and then see who's teaching that kind of painting. And you can kind of go around and around like that, anytime I find a painting on Instagram or the internet, I immediately write it down, save it, log it, start keeping notes on the person, who taught him stuff, where he went to school. Most of the time their ateliers in Paris and, Italy, whatever it is.
Shit, yeah.
Of course, yeah. So you can start to, it's almost like a record label in a way. Like you discover a cool band, it's likely that the record label owner likes that music, so he's likely to put more people like that band on his label. Go to the label, try all the bands, see what you like, see what other bands they're in, It's the same thing with art, I think. Drawing, painting, all this stuff, Did I answer the question? Sorry, dude. I go a million miles a minute, I think.
No, man, you're good. I like that answer.
Hell yeah. So
we got 3 here. I think you're going to do a print for this one in the middle soon, aren't you? I think you're promoting that in your story.
Yeah. June 10th. Yeah. Awesome. I don't know if this comes out before or after. Or,
it won't, but you might have some available still.
Yeah. It runs for, usually they run for 4 weeks. So it's might still be up.
You'll be good then.
That one in the middle was a reference of Solomon J. Solomon, another killer painter and great. He's got a great book on painting and drawing. I think it's called Painting and Drawing. Pretty sure. He did killer shit. This one is of why do I always forget this stuff? I feel like I can recite it to myself all day long, and then but anyway, I referenced a figure of his. There's actually a woman kind of grabbing onto his shoulders, and he's kind of hiking her up in the painting. It's St. George is the painting. And so the cloud shapes kind of emulate the placement of the color where he had her head and hair and stuff, just because it's good to follow their design. If they had a composition that works all these years, there's a reason for it. So omitting anything, it's good to question before you just start canceling shit out and changing everything. Right. Sometimes you don't have a choice. I needed cloud cover there. That's what I wanted. It's turned out it kind of worked. But the whole thing is based on this composition. Although his is narrow, it almost looks like a bookmark. And I was so stoked to do this one. I get really excited about graphite because I tend to have a more fun time doing it. I just don't have as many question marks as I do in oil painting. Excuse me. Let me take a drink real quick.
Yeah, totally.
So this guy wanted an executioner of some sort, and he wanted the guillotine visible. And think that's all he wanted. So
this is a commission then?
This was a commission, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was for, I don't think he's released it yet, but it's like an MMA, like sportswear company. Forget the name of it. Yeah.
That must have been the most left field thing to get.
It was weird, but I guess he's liked my stuff for a while. I also did letters for him along the top and bottom, and a friend of mine did a frame for him. So the shirt turned out pretty badass, to be honest with you. I wouldn't mind one when it's done. It just got sleeve prints and all kinds of cool shit. Hopefully it comes out soon. So I guess this is a good example of kind of what we were talking about earlier, where let's say I'm out of ideas for the day and I'm not sure what to draw. When this guy just says executioner, all of a sudden I just get this bloom of ideas. I start thinking of single character paintings that I like, or any figure in a painting that stood out to me before. And that one just came to mind, the Solomon painting. And he's not wearing a hood in it, and he doesn't have, he's got armor on instead of topless. And I just manipulated it enough, tried to use his tones and his design in my own, and it seemed to work pretty well. I personally actually like this one. I don't like a lot of my stuff, but I think it might have been part of like how fun it was while it was happening. And it just went down very nicely, and it felt like a decent composition. I could be wrong. Looking at it on a small thumbnail like this, I could see some problems with it, but it was still a good time.
Nothing like rubbing in your face.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, it's sick.
Thanks,
in the painting that you referenced, is there the guillotine like that too, or did you add that in?
I didn't. Yeah, I made that up. I did have to look. I did like Google guillotines just to like get some of like the way that they're built and stuff. I had like this kind of like medieval painting of one that had nothing to do with this one at all, but it looked like it was built properly. So I just kind of kept that on my computer and would kind of lean over, check it out. Oh, there's a bolt here, or this is kind of attached here. There was a big dark area underneath the guillotine between his leg and like the edge of the paper. And so I had already, the body at the bottom, if you can tell, that is a person down there. He was already kind of there incidentally. I didn't mean to do that. And so I thought if I put a basket in that dark area, that would take some of that black out and kind of fill that area with a mid-tone. And then I kind of just darkened and toned around that body shape, and it kind of just ended up looking like a guy laying there. At least it is to me. I don't know if anyone else knows. And I liked the way the light was down there, and it just kind of ended up living there.
I like the little shine on the executioner's boots in the shadowy dark area. That's like a nice touch, you know.
Appreciate it. It was a important part of Solomon's painting that I wanted to try to get close to how he represented that too. The skin, the flesh, trying to make up that pose with a nude person was difficult. I tried to get in the mirror and take a picture of myself. I have zero muscles, so that didn't work. I was thinking about like calling people that I knew were like bigger than me to try to see if they could send me pictures and shit. I ended up just sort of winging it, and I think it kind of worked for now.
I like it. There's like a, I mean, you're probably familiar, but like it kind of reminds me of like Hogarth's poses and stuff. Hogarth. Yeah. Like with like the roundedness of them. Mm-hmm. They're like a little exaggerated. It's kind of cool.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Him and, what's that dude's name? French guy. I got the book right behind me. I'm forgetting now, but I learned a lot of drafting from this guy in this book. Might be worth grabbing it. But anyway, yeah, I think that some of those things, like we were talking about academic drawing earlier, have most certainly come into full use later. When I don't have a figure that I can reference, it's totally worked here, you know? You know what? I should just grab this right now before. So this isn't who I was thinking of. The guy I was thinking of. Hold on, let me make sure my phone's plugged in real quick. It's we might have some technical difficulties here. 1 second.
No problem.
I turned off my computer.
Computer's charging the phone.
Computer's charging the phone.
Yeah.
So just take a second for it to load. Yeah. The artist I remember now, his name is Proudhon. He's a French guy. I'll mention it when we get back in there. I wonder if I can let me see if I can run a extension over here. I think this will work. Is the cord in the...
No. At least I can't see it with this. It doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah. Okay. I think I'm back for good now. So the illustrator painter was named as Proudhon, Prudhon, and I learned a bunch from little books, like these little sketchbooks, cheap sketchbooks that I found on Amazon years ago, and lots of standing nudes. So you get feet, calves, butts, legs, all the stuff, everything, all nicely rendered in pencil. But I think that for anyone who's still learning how to draw, it's funny. I'm finding what I said earlier, like you pointed it out, that I didn't disregard academic training as useless or something like that. That's not what I was meaning. I just mean that it was part of a path that I had sort of left behind, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, I think it came across. Yeah.
Good. As I was learning how to do all that, this book changed everything. And I think it really excelled. It pushed me into the next level, I think, of like understanding what you're looking at, how to draw it, and how to tackle it. And it's kind of expensive, but it's called the Dictionary of Human Form. And this is a Proudhon on the cover, actually, I think. Ted Seth Jacobs is the author. The bookmarks in here should display how
crazy. Is it all just images or a lot of text in there too? You got to read it from start to finish, and I think that it won't be hard for you because you're interested in what I'm interested in. You know what I mean? Yeah. You're interested in rendering, and you're interested in drawing the human body better and more accurately, and just be stronger in that. In the beginning, it even gives a kind of an explanation of what he's even talking about, because he's talking about relating all forms as kind of one unit. They're all kind of the same, whether it's the roll on the top of your wrist, the connecting your forearm to the top of your hand, or your knuckle or your forehead. They're all kind of similar, and he describes it. And it's true, even not really using a line technique for drafting anymore, I still see it all over the place. And I think it's really good for drawing anatomy in classes, stuff like that. If you're just practicing on your drawing board, you'll start to see these shapes on people. It sounds vague and weird right now as I try to explain it to you, but if you get the book, open it and check it out, you'll see what I mean. And he goes into how you can see these forms all over the body and how they make up all of the muscles and stuff like that. Anyway, highly recommended. That's your go-to, because I like Bridgman a lot, and I do like Loomis. It makes sense for me.
Yeah. I never got Loomis, but yeah, I know.
Like you tried, but it didn't click, or
no, I just never took it. Yeah, I never I remember Proco mentioning it a couple times, but I think I had already sort of had the concept of getting these things fairly well somehow
Yeah.
prior to hearing about him.
And I like Hogarth if I'm trying to make something superhuman. You know what I mean? Like I like him for that and the strong gesture, but I feel like Bridgman and Loomis are my guys for that, at least at this point in time. But that's a new one to add. I haven't heard of that.
This for me, it was a game changer, and it puts a lot of Bridgman stuff to the side in a way, because I think it's more about, to me, it spoke more to light and roundness rather than blockiness. And it's stuff that I needed to brush up on personally. And so I think I got it right at the right time, you know, because I definitely went through Bridgman's books when I was younger and stuff like that. Also, isn't it Hogarth that did the Expressions book? I used that thing for years. It's just all faces and different angles and happy, sad, upset.
He's done a lot of
so cool.
He's, you know, his work on Tarzan, like those like 70s Tarzan comics, freaking incredible as well. But
yeah, for sure.
I have a book that's all about drapery and folds with him and like the physics of it. It's really good.
Yeah, I probably swiped half of those for comic books I was working on. And, you know, it was always nice to just go, I don't even know what a sheet does when it hits the ground. Like, I'm just going to open this book and just see if anything looks anywhere similar to what I'm trying to put on the paper, you know?
Yeah. I mean, drapery and folds without reference, until you really get the hang of it, like it's gonna look like shit until
it's no fun.
Really study it.
It's easier just to go grab something and just put it the way you need in your room, whether you're drawing with pen and ink or paint or whatever. Just try it, because at least it'll give you some idea of how light drops over the different folds and hides and shadows and stuff like that. Always, whenever you can, use a reference. I think that's one solid piece of advice for myself that I would have known. I wish I would have known earlier, you know?
Yeah, because when you were doing all that, like, you know, comic stuff, it was pure imagination, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of comic books and graphic novels and stuff that I would go through and, you know, see if there's something similar that could help guide me in the right direction. Like I said, Jim Lee was kind of big for, like, his Batman comics were pretty incredible. There was Hush came out in a black and white version and a pencil version, so you can get just the ink, just the pencils, and the color. And so I had all three of them at one point, you know, nice. Taped up to walls and stuff like this. Just trying to absorb that. Whoever inspires you, or think, if you want to draw like this person, just surround yourself in them, you know. I think that works. It's sort of working for me, I guess, you know.
Oh, it totally works. And just in your off time, study their works, and like, it's not just looking at it, it's literally like copying it and figuring out why they made certain decisions and shit. So
exactly,
I'm with you. I went through a solid like 6 months of copying a lot of Wrightson, just like you. Frazetta, you know. But those are great people to learn from because of that strong shadow shape and light and dark.
And that's the thing too, is it's like, if, you know, one person will really like one painter and another person will really like another painter, and there's no reason that both of those people can't, you know, follow those feelings. It's really all it takes to try to do something else. It wouldn't make any sense. I don't see anyone doing that. I just mean, just emulate who you love the most and admire the most, and that's where all of the good shit comes from, you know. Being like into graffiti when I was a teenager and stuff, it got drilled into me that copying style is the worst thing you could do. You know what I mean? You make up your own fucking letters and you stay away from everybody else's. And that, I took that ideology like into drawing as I started doing it professionally and stuff, accidentally, where I thought it was bad to look at other people's work. This is a long time ago now, but after discovering that it's okay and that's how all art is made, music, dance, everything that you can think of, it really opened so many doors and it was so liberating and badass. And I learned so much so quickly by by just looking at other people's work that I liked, you know?
My journey's like very similar, man.
Yeah.
The concept of even looking at a reference, it was literally
huge
in the
no.
last like 7. It was like literally in like the last 7 years. Before that, it was all. I mean, my art up until then was psychedelic doodling. It doesn't seem like yours was that far off in that direction either.
It really was, yeah.
I've been there, but there's merit to that too, though, because you can come up with some weird shit that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. But it's limited at a certain point.
And at that time, I thought that was, for me, it was everything I wanted to know. I wanted to do books. I wanted to do comics. I loved R. Crumb and Greg Irons and all those guys, and that's what I wanted to do. So that's who I looked up to, and that's who I emulated. And it's funny that no one told me, but I have to say it out loud, that it's okay to evolve and like change. And if I could not segue, but one tangent real fast about that was that when I was drawing comics, I started doing the Jeff Darrow stuff away from Burney Wrights, and because I found it to be easier and just less of a headache and more fun. And that was important to me, especially if I had to do a lot of pages. And people really liked it. It got a good positive response. But when I stopped doing that, clients were really confused too. All of a sudden, I'm not really doing the Burney Wrights and stuff anymore. I'm not doing the Jeff Darrow stuff. So what am I doing now? I'm just posting these graphite drawings of like witches and shit. Like, am I even following the same guy? That kind of stuff. And I knew that was the case, but I had to do it. It wasn't. I couldn't just keep. What's the point of doing all of this if I'm not going to keep doing what I enjoy? And I should be able to change if I'd like to. And no one ever pushed back on that. That's not my point. My point was that I kind of didn't realize I was changing so much until much further down the road. And I looked back and go, holy shit, I drew so differently. All of these different, year by year, it was changing drastically. And it's crazy to me that anyone wanted to buy the graphite work. I was really questioning it for a long time. And I had to overlap ink commissions and then work quietly on the side doing graphite. And then finally, I think Creature was the first one I did a graphite commission for. Did like this sabbatic goat, who was the body, the chest and the abdomen are a Proudhon figure, as a matter of fact. And then I just looked at my own arms for all of her arms and stuff. And I have a goat head hanging from the wall in my living room. And I just took him and put him under light in my studio and drew a goat head on it. But anyway, that was the first graphite, and I didn't know if it would go over well, and everyone liked it. And so then I just stopped. I put all of my microns away and just only offered graphite, because now I was getting paid to practice graphite, you know?
Right.
And it was going pretty well. I would do the occasional ink drawing, and the same thing happened with oil. I had to just start presenting it as what I can offer you, you know? And hopefully someone likes it, you know? But yeah, I had to mention that.
It is interesting how much you've evolved. And at the same time, I know what you like now, but it seems to me it's more of what you enjoy doing more than, or it's a combination of your current taste and interest with what you enjoy doing versus diminishing anyone who loves that stuff. Because for me, Greg Irons, R. Crumb, like that's the stuff that I get a lot of current passion from. But I never, in this conversation, ever felt like it was beneath you or anything. It's just,
that's good.
You've moved on, you know?
Yeah.
So I just want to say it from that perspective too.
And thank you, because I need that reassurance sometimes, because I'll eat myself up after with this and be like, was I an asshole or what? Like, what did I do? But I still have all of the Zap comics and all of those, everyone, Junk Waffle and all that hanging on the wall behind me down here. I still love them. And yeah, I appreciate it. Speaking of all of the graphite transitional stuff, the one on the right, the still life with the skull, is a still life in the studio. I set all that up. I have a human skull, which I'm always proud to announce to everybody. I have a little Baphomet statue and some candles I borrowed from my friend Emily, and some other little knickknacks and stuff. And I knew that the more I can get drawing from life under my belt, the more I'll excel at the whole thing. And I wouldn't say convinced because it sounds nefarious, but I did kind of convince him to take this still life for a shirt design, a hoodie design, Necrofier. And Christian's a friend of mine. I've known him for a long time, and he's always happy to let me go nuts anyways. And this, I have, for anyone interested in seeing a full beginning to end drawing from life and how I work, this is a perfect example. It's in the reels on my Instagram. I think, I have video of all of these drawings and paintings that we've been talking about, but this one stands out as a good one that's fairly quick too. I think it's only, maybe 12 30-second chunks or something like that. Mm-hmm. And really excited to do it. And I did it really quickly. And I remember that being this sort of turning point of understanding. And like, I felt like I arrived, I guess, in a sense where I understood this new method I'd been studying with Impressionists. And I'm not saying the drawing itself is the greatest, I think, but I got what I needed out of it, and it represented what I looked at pretty accurately here in the studio. And it looked just like it on paper. And that to me was what all I wanted, and that's kind of all I ever want. I just want accuracy, and also, good design and composition is something that I don't know how long that'll ever take to attain. I think this one needs work, but it's kind of there, Yeah.
I think it's awesome. Being
Thanks,
too
man.
humble. The lighting on that skull is impeccable, and the way it's hitting right below like the teeth and all that. Super cool, man.
Appreciate it. Yeah, the skull I have is kind of buck toothed. Or like it's got the canines that hang out a little extra.
Yeah.
And so I did have to take her jaw and like move it forward just slightly, just to get a little bit of light on her chin, and the bridge of her nose is missing, which is unfortunate. So I've roughed up like paper towel and mashed it in graphite and like clay and stuff. And I kind of mush it in there to at least get an effect of how light drops directly on that piece of bone. Because it's typically facing straight up on almost every skull, and it catches almost as much light as the top of your cranium,
Yeah.
So it's kind of an important part that's missing, but I make do, This one I don't remember if I drew it in there. This might be without it, actually, now that I'm looking at it. But
what about this like figure study on the left here with the goat head? Is this the goat head that you own?
Yeah, that is the goat. Yeah.
Yeah. Right, so he's got the white things. I got a goat head as well. It's in my attic right now, but it's a full black goat. Problem is, it just fucking smells a little bit. I don't know where to put it, but I used to have it up in my like main room, but like I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe the stuffing needs to be cleaned out or something. I don't know.
It's like a very slight musk. It's common, and it's not like rotting or anything. It's just,
it gives your house a little style, dude. Just hang it up there. That goat has made several appearances in my drawings and paintings. It is mostly black, but I emphasize some of this white under the neck. Yep. And to try to get some type of three-dimensional push on the muzzle, I drew him too small for her head for sure, but overall it was a success because of how much I learned about Delacroix's skin tones. It's a Delacroix figure. He doesn't have a sword in the painting. I use that figure constantly. I just love the way that the combinations of blue, green, and brown are in the skin tones.
There's a sickliness to it.
I love it. Yeah. And so that was the painting for me. I wanted to study that Delacroix figure, and then I needed to be able to sell it as my own kind of. So I thought maybe a goat head would be cool. Jason Tarpey's sword will work. again. Although it's super elongated, I wish I would have given it more like weight, around the hilt and all this stuff. It could have really helped some of the balance, I think. The Delacroix figure is just standing there with 0 underneath her. And I think he just omitted probably a broomstick or a yardstick that she was leaning on, maybe. Is my best guess. And if you hold your thumb up without it, I think it looks better without the line going vertically down.
Yeah, I can see what you mean, actually.
Yeah. Another practice, and I learned so much, and I'm still using. Early this morning, actually, I'm using those same tones in some skin I'm doing.
Nice.
And it went over well too. I sold some prints, which is cool. There is some reassurance in those things when you release them and they sell well. You're like, all right, I didn't totally fucking blow it. I'm not a hack. This is working. I can keep trying.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the goat. The one on the right is the one I keep blabbering on about. I'm sitting right next to it.
Yeah, I've been seeing you chipping away at it on Instagram.
Yeah. And this is, I think this is like last week sometime. It's already kind of come a little further. It's a commission for a album cover. These Greek gentlemen, I don't think they want any of their information out, but I'll say when it releases and stuff. It's definitely a cool piece. It's like one 15-minute song, and this is the cover for it, for their LP. I've totally, speaking of taking concepts and running way the fuck out in the middle of nowhere with them, this is what I did on this one. And I think they seem to be, they like it, which is cool because it's nothing like what they asked for. They wanted some type of space, universe, cosmic, which it sort of is, and it will be a little bit more towards the end. I'm going to put stars in it, and there should be more of a cohesive, dark, black space behind them, Okay. And he wanted death to be sort of present. It was, anyway, I won't blabber on about it, but I decided I wanted this figure in here being sort of picked up maybe and being taken by death. That's kind of all there is to it as far as my own concept goes. And getting these two to dance together in this picture has been near impossible, but I'm sort of making moves in between them now. And brought some blues down below her that I think have helped. And
has that been the hardest part, is the interplay between the two figures?
Always, yeah. It's that piecemeal thing we were talking about where I have that skeleton is sitting in my studio with drapery over his head up here on this table I have in a corner lit properly.
So it's real life reference. Yeah, I think that's all that. Okay.
Yeah, but I have different colored drapery on him, and so that's not super helpful other than light tonal value is what I meant. And then that's a Rubens figure. And also I'm referencing this other painting. I keep forgetting the name. I think he's like a Czech or a Russian guy. And it's called Falling Star is the name of the painting. And it's this woman kind of falling back. It's just her from the waist up, and she's falling backwards, and then she's kind of exploding into outer space. Just kind of a neat picture. Using that as sort of like a color reference for some of the blues and browns and some of the stuff bursting out of her chest, which needs a lot of work still. We'll see. Talk to me next week. We'll see how it goes. Dude, that thing might have a knife
I'll check
in.
So the orientation of it, then it almost looks like it's like cassette orientation. Is that intentional, or because it's not a square?
So. It's not a square, but I've slowly realized, well, on most album covers that just want a single square format, I typically will draw on a rectangle anyways, so that it's an acceptable standalone painting as well. So if they want to keep it, they can frame it, or I can sell it, I guess I'm not a fan of square paintings, I guess.
It's harder to work with. Yeah.
So in this case, I've tried to keep them sort of the initial thought was that I was going to keep them towards the bottom square, but I thought if I moved them up, it would work. Is this what you mean? The orientation of the placement and where they are?
I just mean the canvas shape. So the measurements are obviously not a square. So
right. Yeah. So the
you
square
basically have the options of like, I mean, I've seen the ones where, you know, you have the border around it. It's
right.
not taking up a lot of visual space. And then this is the center thing. That's like one way of going about it. But like, I was just curious the thought process.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's it. You nailed it. Like basically her toe at the very bottom and the tip of that flame is a square. So it's equal in all aspects. Okay. As far as that's concerned. So that top fifth or whatever is, either they can trash that or they can move it up if they like. She did get stretched, if I'm honest. She should be a little shorter in the, what is it? The, the shin foot area.
Yeah.
That's still something that may happen. I may end up repainting her leg a little shorter. But it seems to be going well. So I don't know if I should bother with something so kind of time consuming at this point. It might still makes a square. It's still kind of fitting in there. And I think I can make it work,
It's just how chubby you want the figure to look, Yeah. The shorter the leg, the chubbier it'll be. So
that's true.
There's more elegance with the long. So
Mannerous. Yeah.
That's what you're playing off of.
Yeah, that's usually the trick. If anything looks weird, it needs to be longer. Yeah. And this is another, I started this with an Impressionist technique with just color blobs. And now that I'm going down and whittling it down to these smaller passages that need to make sense, does require some old academic ability that I've absorbed over the years. And I'm just this morning, I started doing some of that, starting over with a heavy line and kind of working from darks to lights again and kind of getting the forms down, the usual business, And this next one was the first painting I ever did without line work, I think. Oh, wow. So this also started that way. Although, because I'm copying a Tiapolo painting, he works academically. So you're going to have brown edges on things and stuff. So as I was referencing his painting, I was also referencing his umber tones and stuff that were behind some of these colors. So it ended up taking the appearance of an academic painting, which I thought was interesting to some degree. But yeah, all of this was just color samples and blobs all over the place until finally, you just hone in on the small at the end. And the skull I got, that's the skull that I used in the other still life. I set her up on the table and kind of got that painted decently, and made some of the cherubs a little more nefarious than Tiapolo's like happy, fun angels, Tiapolo also had a dove above his Mary, and I thought a bat would be cool in place of that. Yeah, that's and some little demon figures in the clouds, and another successful painting for the time. I was happy with it, and I was really ecstatic that I could make these colors work. I didn't know I didn't know that you could just buy oil paint and make colors look like this, if that makes any sense. It sounds like a caveman talking, but that's
how it would be more difficult.
It was difficult, but when you finally get things to work, it's just, I guess it's a proud moment, I suppose. So that was really just really stoked that I could make things work that simply, you know what I mean? Like, obviously it took a lot of effort and it sucked to do, because, but the final result I was happy with, I guess.
I know what you mean. I'm trying to think of how to describe the feeling. It's more of, okay, there's a shit ton of hard work that goes into it, but then when you figure out how to leverage a medium's strengths and then the medium does that strength, it feels like fucking magic. Is that kind of what you mean? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Every now and again, I'll discover, it happens maybe once a day, where you'll put something up there, then you're trying to figure something out. And all of a sudden you can see an exact representation of all these things you've loved in paintings up to this point. You go, holy shit, I just did what they've been doing. This is part of why I love these paintings, turns out blue and doo-doo brown green look really nice together, you know, like a nice sky blue and then green. It makes it look real earthy, and it's just everything for some reason for that spot.
Pink is a nice intermediary there too, you know.
Yeah, and that's something that I have a trouble not using too much of. I'll love when it goes down, and I kind of want to put it a little more, and then over here, and I want to put it on their fingertips. Yeah, yeah. It's also, and some of that, you're right to say it's pink, because it is pretty fucking pink when you're mixing it. But a lot of it is these, it's almost equal parts umber, red, and yellow. Two dips, and mix it. And then sometimes if you add a little white, it can turn this more pinky kind of tone. And I do remember years ago at an art museum with my lady looking at a Rubens and looking like into, I forget the name of it, the little duct in your eye. Looking into that part of the painting and how brightly pink and orange and dark it was, you know, how he was doing all these things all at once, and how much I wanted to do that. And it's neat to finally be able to be the chemist, you know, and figure it out, and you figure out the combination of it. And now I can use it anytime I want, which is kind of neat, to my own detriment even. So yeah, I'm hoping that thing goes well. It feels like it's always not like one step forward, two step back. That's all it always feels.
And then the painting you're looking at right now?
Yeah, that's the one here on the one with the lady flying. Most days I feel like I learn everything or learn something every day, but I don't progress in the work every day on the actual work, the tangible work. So if I have a shitty day, almost like clockwork, the next day will be good. And then I'll usually go on a run of 1 or 2 days like that, and then it'll fall again. So it's a vicious cycle. But now that I'm kind of used to the failure all the time, I'm able to decipher what it is that I did wrong during that time of mistakes for the last 6 hours. And I'm able to sit on it and come back in and correct it. Usually, not always, but usually. It doesn't
if it's predictable, it's fixable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like there's a level-headed approach that I really like.
Yeah. And
what you're saying, you know, so many times artists and people in the public, they think that we're all just eccentric, and yes, we are, but there's a level-headedness to what you're saying. You know?
Yeah, I think there's got to be. Yeah, I mean, it does make me crazy feeling. No, it does. It has those moments.
For sure.
But you have to think rationally most of the time, because it is just it's a science, and there is something to it, and the answer is there. You just haven't found it yet. You need to mix a new thing. You need to try anything. You need to calm the fuck down and come back and revisit it, you know? But I'll say it again too. It's like, knowing when you knowing that your day is bad because of mistakes you made is okay when you understand that, it's only because you're trying to learn new stuff, you know? If we went in there painting the same skull every day, you'd probably be a master at painting that same skull every day, but it wouldn't be very much fun, you know, I imagine. So new shit, new problems, new heartache, new solutions, always, every day, new stuff, you know?
And if you didn't hold yourself to such a high standard and have scrutiny, then you're just never gonna progress either. That's the thing is, so many artists, I mean, we're just fucking hitting all the marks of vice. But I think one thing is like drawing every day, but like kind of doodling mindlessly is not going to make you really get any better. It's all about the intention and this kind of necessary pain, not like agony, but like if you're not like
it could
sometimes hating what you're doing, then you're probably not having enough scrutiny to actually get better and attention.
Yeah. Yep. I wish I had, it's on my phone, and my phone is filming right now, but the Benson quotes, you guys have to, I'm saying you guys for everyone listening and watching, Y'all have to fucking listen to this or read this thing. He talks about several things that we've talked about in a way that are so like freeing and satisfying to hear someone say that I revisit it constantly, sometimes several times a week, just to hear him say these things about learning, that the learning never stops. This is kind of common knowledge with oil painting that you hear a lot of the old masters would say in their 60s, 70s, whatever, that I'm still struggling with all this stuff. And that's the kind of shit that I need, you know what I mean? Yeah. To make it through the day and to wake up tomorrow and do it again. Because some of it does get much easier, and there are some really fun times with it. And when you get a passage working and a relationship of colors that talk to each other nicely, it makes your whole month. And just to know that can't happen all the time for everybody every day all the time is very satisfying to hear, you know, because I believe that you can't, like, I believe that that's how people painted, that they were doing this all first try. But I don't think it's the case, you know? No. It's certainly not for me. But yeah, I could go on about it, but please read the Benson quotes. Yeah.
All right, so we got two more.
Yeah.
I think maybe just for the sake of time, kind of speed on it a little bit, if that's all right.
Sure. The person in the white landscape was part of the trying to sell graphite to clients, and it worked. Total success. The middle one is something I shared with you to sort of explain the start of the paintings and how I do them. It's a self-portrait. This was done in probably, I would say, hour and a half to 2 hour, 15 minutes. Very quickly, mixing the paint, holding the brush up, looking in the mirror, placing it, putting it where it goes down. No construction lines, no nothing. Working around white spots is no big deal because I'm only comparing one color to the next. So I start with, it's nice to still start with darks and midtones before you get to the lightest lights, but try to put in your lightest lights, try to work around in visual order is what Boston School calls it. You get the major impression, like my forehead popped out a lot. I think I was wearing a mutilation t-shirt.
That's what I was wondering. I was like, is that a Samael t-shirt? Almost looks like the Samael logo a little bit. Old one. Yeah, it looks real squirrely because it was like, I don't want to worry about all the letters, And the figure in the back is a skeleton hanging behind me that I never got to. I plan on finishing it eventually. And then this is a study of Sargent's Macbeth, which I've seen in person. Is fucking jaw-dropping. It's one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. But just a graphite study for a client who actually the same person bought these on either side of this. Just more graphite study. That stuff I can do all day long. I love it, and I haven't given graphite a solid shot, honestly. It's like, to me, it's the means to then do the pen and ink, for just like the line. Yeah. Maybe, I love how it looks, but I'm sure you'd be great at it immediately. You should try it for sure. It's fun because you can go a little bit further than you can with ink. At least I could. I was no Burney Wrightson, and I'm no engraver like Dorr. So pencil to me was the answer to those things I wanted to get inside the drawings, those gradients in the atmosphere and stuff. It works well for that. We'll just have to trade knowledge. Absolutely, dude. Our respective gaps. And then bring us home with these. And the one on the right, the one that's finished looking, is a pet portrait commission. She sent me her boyfriend's dog pictures of her boyfriend's dog, and I just kind of used the best pictures I could and kind of formed them into this. I forget the name of the painting that I referenced. It's actually flipped, and the tree goes, it's like Leaving Transylvania by somebody. And I loved the tree, and I liked the way that
the clouds echoed the tree movement, that lightning.
Yeah.
And then it kind of happened again in this field in the bottom. And I just really dug the whole thing. And so I used that for reference. And these two are something I'm currently working on. So this is what I'm like showing a client. I'm doing these sketches. He wants a female figure kind of rising from what could be viewed as like depression or kind of overcoming this hardship. And I just started farting out what I thought would be a good placement for tone. And now these two are the differences between like working on figure poses and stuff, trying to see if she should be reaching forward or reaching upward. He likes the upward, so that's where we're going to stay. And yeah, I probably will work on that again tomorrow, do a new one. Nice. And so, yeah, that's a good process pictures from beginning to end, even if it is a totally different picture with a dog. That's pretty much the outcome, the start and the outcome of how I work these days with light and shadow.
It's beautiful, man. And what a unique pet portrait. I mean, we both have seen probably some pet portraits that are not the best. It's a really unique, cool way to do it, you know?
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's definitely grim, but I mean, it's my favorite stuff.
They're coming to you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I wonder, like, do they know that it's going to look like an obituary, you know? But yeah. They always seem to come back and say, thank you so much. The guy loved it. So that's cool to hear, you know? Yeah.
Perfect. Well, dude, we're right at the 3-hour mark, but that kind of flew by. I mean, I think there's a lot of nuggets in there, and at the very least, it's a ton of fun chatting with you, man.
It's good to meet you in person for sure. And I feel like I want to ask you more about watercolor. I want to ask you more about your pen and ink endeavors. I'm going to get back
anytime, you know, beyond just, you know, you coming back on the show sometime.
I'd love to.
We can talk anytime.
Hell yeah, man.
It's always good, you know, just bouncing ideas off people too, because it's a lonely occupation, man. I'm sure
it is. And that's something we didn't really even get into is the, you know, the abandonment of friendships and stuff and all social aspects of life outside of my wife. And I don't do anything. This is all I do. And it was hard for a long time. It was dark. It was pretty low and shitty. But I've somehow just adapted. And the last like 6 years have been, you know, it's all good kind of, I guess I could say, you know, it was tough at first though, for sure. But this is awesome. I could do this every day. Talk to somebody about all of our stuff, all of our problems, our art problems. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's been a ton of fun, dude. Well, we've given a lot of advice, but maybe just if you were to think of one thing to leave other artists with of any skill levels, what would be maybe just one thing to leave them with advice wise?
Man, it seems like everything we do is like advice ridden. Like because every movement you make with this stuff, there's someone more qualified and better at it that has said something about it before you started asking questions about it. And I think it's just keep being inspired by who you admire the most. You know what I mean? I think that's important. And I think it's not something that I took into consideration too far into it, I guess. Make copies, emulate, copy. That's what I think. I think if you like a passage in a painting or a figure from someone that someone else drew, copy the shit out of it and make it into your own. And I think that's how I learned best, you know, borrowing from others, you know, what do they say? Standing on the shoulders of giants, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, scientists don't, you know, start over by trying to, you know, recreate all of the laws of, you know, physics and science and that kind of stuff. It's cumulative, right? And art's the same way. But like you said earlier, sometimes there's a perception that you have to almost reinvent the wheel instead of working from what has worked and putting your stamp on it with time, depending on where you're at in your journey. But if you're having enough overall fun, you get obsessed with it, and you can relate to this kind of mindset, in time, the work will be good, but the process and enjoying it, that's what you ultimately get addicted to.
Yeah. Oddly enough, it's definitely like self-flagellation, like some kind of torturous fucking devilish device. But yeah, I can't stop. That's all I care about. It's all I think about. And so, and I think just to say it again, it's those little wins that you get each time you make a new picture or a new sketch. Even sitting down and doing a sketch and it somehow being slightly impressive to me is huge. It makes my day, you know. And it's kind of neat that you can. That's, you know, all the bullshit over the years adds up to sometimes that one little moment, and it's so worth it to me, you know.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, Burney, thank you. For anybody who's watching still, first of all, thank you. The episodes every Thursday. You can support Burney by buying prints from his site. Recently launched a Patreon, only $5, and you get to hear, you know, him, you know, talk about his sorrows, dude, every month. Totally worth it.
Yeah. All the links are on Instagram page, Batdog.
Yeah, I'll put them in the YouTube bio too. But once again, support the other artists in this community, and thank you guys out there watching.
Thank you so much, man. Huge honor.